Are you searching for the best in online black radio? Then go to blacktalkradionetwork.com, helping you filter through the noise. Real talk, black talk.
The internet is full of half-truths and all-out lies. We've all seen them, and many people on social media complaining about it. Here's your chance to show and prove. WorldAfropedia.com is a black-owned and operated encyclopedia. There are several thousand articles, but we need help. We can't uncover all the truth ourselves. So please, join us and become a writer, editor, or blogger for WorldAfropedia.com today. Every little bit counts. We owe it to the future generations to put the truth out there. Visit WorldAfropedia.com, the African-centered encyclopedia, a global database of African knowledge for the purpose of bringing about global African wisdom and understanding. WorldAfropedia.com.
See, so when black people say, well, I'm not going to be involved in no blackness and all like that, see, I know where it's going because I tried that right from the beginning. That's how I got started. I'm going to run away from this thing called racism. But I found that there was no place to run. That was my ambition when I started out. You know, I wanted to be a cartoonist. So I found out because of racism, that was a problem. That became a problem with Mr. Magruder. See, my characters are going to be black, so I'm reacting to racism right there. Okay, Mr. Aaron Magruder and Boondocks.
Yes, sir.
See what I mean? So hey, there's nowhere to run. See, so I gave up the idea of being a cartoonist. So I said, well, now what am I going to be? I don't know. But I know that I'm going to find some place where color don't make no difference.
Yeah, I work about 32 jobs over the course of a week. I think it's interesting I got 32 jobs and most niggas say they can't find one. Niggas.
You're familiar with Bambi, right?
Burr. Burr. Look, he's starting to talk.
The 1942 Disney movie turned the cute little deer into an American classic. But did you know that a lot of the art in that Oscar-winning film was actually inspired by Chinese landscapes? That's because one of the animators was a Chinese immigrant named Tyrus Wong. He died last week at the age of 106. Pamela Tom is a director who spent 17 years making a documentary about Tyrus Wong.
I want to reference a quote that appears in my film, it's by Tyrus, and he says, if you can make a painting with 5 strokes instead of 10, you can make your painting sing. And that captures so beautifully his philosophy and approach towards art. It's less is more. It's very painterly, very ethereal, very impressionistic, and that's what he brought to Bambi. So if you go back, it looks like a Chinese landscape painting.
Which makes sense when you know about his life. He immigrated to the U.S. in 1920, and this was not an easy time for Chinese people to come to the United States. Tell us a little bit about his journey.
Yeah, so there was, a lot of political turmoil in China at the time, and his father decided to bring Tyrus to America for better opportunities. The Chinese Exclusion Act was in force, which barred the immigration of all Chinese to the U.S., except for a very small number of classes, which was, minister, student, diplomat, and a merchant. So they came over under false papers. They were pretending to be merchants. So it was a very frightening first entry into the U.S.
And he grew up where?
They originally went to Sacramento, which was nearby San Francisco, but, his father, it was difficult for him to find work, so he went to Los Angeles and left Tyrus alone to live in a boarding house in a dark alley in Sacramento. And naturally, as a young boy, he started skipping school. He was not all that interested in academics, and he just was kind of goofing off and working at a grocery, trying to pay off the cost of his ticket to the U.S., But when he started failing in school, his father sent him $20 and ordered him to get on the next train to Los Angeles. And so he was reunited with his father. Was greeted with a couple of slaps across the face for being such a,
This guy can't get a break.
I know. And so it was in middle school. He was going to Benjamin Franklin Middle School in Pasadena, where his teachers recognized his talents and suggested that he try to get a scholarship to Otis Art Institute. Pursuing art, becoming an artist was probably the least plausible pursuit you could have, imagined. His father had to borrow $90, which was a princely sum, to get him through his first semester at art school. After that, he was able to get full scholarships. So his father not only went out and borrowed that money, but he made Tyrus practice his calligraphy every single night when he came home. They lived in this tiny, boarding house, and they didn't have money for paper. They didn't have money for ink. So he had Tyrus practice his calligraphy by dipping a brush in water and leaving imprints and impressions on newspapers. So he could not have done this without his father's support.
Wow. And he eventually makes his way to Disney, which is a story in itself. What was it like for him to be a Chinese artist at Disney? Well,
he was one of very, very few. He was the first to work in the animation department, and he entered as a lowly in-betweener, which was your sort of entry-level job. And, he learned that Bambi was in pre-production, and he got the book, he read the book by Felix Salten, and went home, and on the weekends and at night, he would just draw these sketches, these small little paintings that captured the feeling of the forest. And he brought them back to his boss, who was Tom Kodrick, the art director on Bambi, and showed them to him. And Tom Kodrick brought them to Walt Disney's attention. And when he saw them, Walt said, "This is it. This is the look." So Tyrus was immediately promoted to what was called, an inspirational sketch artist. He would create the look and the feel, and based on those paintings, everything else followed.
And it sounds, it's such a great title, inspirational sketch artist. It sounds like his talent was recognized. Did he get his due at Disney, though?
He was recognized by the artist there, but in the film itself, his credit was one of many background artists. So in a way, publicly, it really wasn't until decades later, when books were starting to be written about him and stories, that the full weight of his contributions were acknowledged and recognized.
Do you want to say more about, what was the role of race in the trajectory of his life and the kind of unseen, unsung aspects of his career?
Yeah, any other person would have been thwarted by the racism, the discrimination. At Republic Pictures, he was on his first day of work, and the head of the department called him a chink. This is something he had to bear day in and day out throughout his career. He couldn't buy a house, until the laws were changed in California that allowed Chinese and other minorities to own property. But I think that it was that strong, singular drive to create and to paint and to draw and to, share the world as he saw it is what got him through that.
What was he like to be with?
Oh, it's like I get tears in my eyes when I think about him, and that I will no longer have the gift of being in his presence. He always gave. He would give his art away. He gave his time, he gave his love, he gave his talents. He was just that kind of person, and he was just an incredibly rare human being in spirit.
Personally, for you, what do you draw from him? How has he affected your career? Your sense of self?
I was drawn to him because we, as minorities working in the arts, or any person working in the arts, you want to believe that your dreams are possible, that it's not pursuing a dead end. You hear enough no's your whole life. To encounter Tyrus, to learn about him, to see what he achieved, just gave me so much hope and faith that this pursuit of creating and being an artist is worthwhile and possible. And that's what I want to share with others by telling his story. And I think it's been affecting people in that way.
Well, thank you so much for telling us about him. Pamela Tom is the director of the documentary film Tyrus.
Thank you for having me.
Context of White Supremacy. Gus T Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Today's date, Thursday, January 5th, 2017. So I have been told. I hope everyone made it safely through all of the New Year's festivities. Hope you remained sober and have been constructive for the early going of 2017. This is Workplace Racism. We do this every Thursday. I consistently have people who write in and say that they want to share for Workplace Racism, but they don't know when it comes on. It's the same time every week, every Thursday. I think we've been at it for 7 months now. Haven't missed the Thursday. Every Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain, 5 p.m. Pacific. Every Thursday, Workplace Racism. There you go. But if you have commentary you would like to share, certainly we always encourage, if you are a black person and you are what they call self-employed, and you have seen the difference in how working for yourself, how that alters the landscape in terms of your job situation and how you deal with other whites. Certainly, we want to hear about those experiences in detail. If you have problems, if you have figured out some codification that works to minimize conflict, problems, reduce any issues on the job so you can go in, pleasantness, not be bothered, get all of your raises on time, promotions, and just go on about and have a great career. That's exactly what we need. So dial in the number 641-715-3640. The code 564943#. Press star 6 if you would like to participate. A few things that I will get to before we get to folks who called in. The clip that you heard at the beginning, I posted. There were many articles about Mr. Wong and his work on Bambi and at Disney on the whole. He was, well recognized later in life, living more than a century. I would hope so. But most of the articles, or I think the first article that I saw in the New York Times, it was directly linked to racism, white supremacy, and they were just talking about all of the abuse that he experienced throughout his career, even though he did all of this amazing artwork that made so much money for racists at Walt Disney. But I saw the article and I posted it. I think it was after our Workplace Racism program last week that they had the report in the New York Times. So I posted it, but I said that is total workplace racism. And for people who have a good memory, this past summer, Frank Norman, black male, also works at Disney, and he has worked on all of these projects. He's been there for years, just numerous huge mega hits that they've had at Disney. Same thing where they've made all of this money, and they threw him in the back in some office, and same thing. They talked about all the abuses of black male, all the abuse that he experienced, and ultimately he's older now. He's still alive, and he said he didn't want to retire. He reached the age, and they were just like, well, roll on out of here, Frank. We're done with you. You've made us enough money. You can go on, pick cotton, do whatever you're going to do. And he didn't want to do that. That happens with a lot of folks when they get older. They want to stay active. So he kept coming back to the studio, and they just kind of put him in a little closet room, in the back, and they called it Floydering. I think Thomas in New York sent that link, but I played that clip this past summer with the intro where Mr. Fuller was talking about he wanted to be an animator, but you're not going to get away from racism. Same thing. And even from the New York Times article, that report that you just heard, that was from PRI, Public Radio International. But the New York Times article, I'm just going to read a little bit because they had a little bit more detail. I'm not reading the whole report. I'm just kind of skipping through. They write, in the years that followed, Mr. Wong endured poverty, white supremacy, and chronic lack of recognition, not only for his work at Disney, but also for his fine art before finding acclaim in his 90s. Mr. Wong died on Friday at 106, a Hollywood studio artist, painter, printmaker, calligrapher, greeting card illustrator, and in later years, maker of fantastical kites. He was one of the most celebrated Chinese-American artists of the 20th century. But because of white supremacy, to which Asian Americans were long subject, he passed much of his career unknown to the general public. Artistic recognition, when Mr. Wong did find it, was all the more noteworthy for the fact that among Chinese immigrant men of his generation, professional prospects were largely limited to menial jobs like houseboy and laundryman. Should be laundry boy too, I would think. Then there was the affront of the in-betweener's job itself. So I'm skipping down, and now they're talking about his career once he starts working at Walt Disney. So his career as an in-betweener's job itself, painstaking, repetitive, and for Mr. Wong, quickly soul-numbing. It is the assembly line work of animation, a terrible use of his talents, and as a landscape artist and a painter. Mr. Canemaker said, this is someone who had worked on researching Mr. Wong's life and all of his contributions. All of that should sound painfully familiar to many of our listeners, being astronomically brilliant and talented and having all of that wasted in the system of white supremacy. Continuing, they write, Walt Disney went crazy over him, said Mr. Canemaker, who wrote about Mr. Wong in his book, Before the Animation Begins, The Art and Lives of Disney Inspirational Sketch Artists. This came out in 1996. He said, I love this indefinite quality, the mysterious quality of the forest. Mr. Wong was unofficially promoted to the rank of inspirational sketch artist. But he was more than that, Mr. Canemaker explained. He was the designer, he was the person they went to when they had questions about the color and how to lay something out. He even influenced the music and the special effects. Just by the look of the drawings, he inspired people. Mr. Wong spent 2 years painting the illustrations that would inform every aspect of Bambi. Throughout, the finished film lent a brooding quality by its stark landscapes, misty, desaturated palettes and figures often seen in silhouettes. His influence is unmistakable. But in 1941, in wake of a bitter employees' strike that year, Disney fired Mr. Wong, though he had chosen not to strike. He felt the studio had been good to him, Mr. Canemaker said. He was let go amid the lingering climate of post-strike resentments. On Bambi, Mr. Wong's name appears quite far down in the credits as a mere background artist. Mr. Wong joined Warner Brothers in 1942, working there, and lent out on occasion to other studios until his retirement in 1968. Lent out almost sounds like I'm reading Edward Baptist, where, here, this is my nigger, he's pretty good. I'll let you borrow him for a week, do whatever you want, and then just bring my nigger back. The last portion, it reads, the indignities he endured were not confined to the studios. Trying to buy a house, he and his wife, the former Ruth Kim, were told that each property they inquired about had just been sold. Then, in a month, you'd go back there, and the sign was still there, Mr. Wong recalled in Tyrus, which is a documentary film about Mr. Wong's life and his work at Disney and what have you, and the white supremacy he experienced. But that was the New York Times piece, which really at its core was about the racism that this non-white male endured, even though he was spectacularly skilled, brilliant artist, made them all this money. You're still just a nigger, don't forget that. You might be a yellow nigger, nigger nonetheless. System of white supremacy, nigger nonetheless. With that, if folks have commentary they would like to share, one of our listeners in the UK, actually, she had a significant work. Well, actually, I forgot. We have other UK listeners and folks outside the States who do listen to Workplace Racism, and they have written in. Obviously, it's more difficult for them to participate live, but they have written in to discuss some of the problems. I think we had one of our listeners in the UK. She wrote with the situation about getting packages sent to the job and white people kind of looking at her some type of way about that. That was, I think, a few weeks back towards the end of last year. But we had a different non-white person, black female in the UK, and she had been talking about her work experience, treachery of white women, and the same thing that you heard with Mr. Wong, just not being valued, where you come in and you do the work of 12 people. You work all day long. You're not loafing. You're really, investing yourself in this and just trying to do the best job that you can. And it's paying off. Same with Mr. Wong. It is paying off. Walt Disney is, they came up off of Bambi, did pretty well, still making lots of nickels off of that. But it was a black female in the UK. She was saying the same thing, that she was putting in all this time and energy for this place where she was working at and just not really being valued. And I think that, as I stated as I was reading that New York Times article, I think that will be painfully familiar for a lot of black people. The only other quick thing I will get in, I could have, because a listener put it in my hand, Fences with Viola Davis and Denzel Washington. I could have easily constructed an opening segment of audio clips from Fences that are all about workplace racism. In fact, the whole movie begins with Denzel Washington's character, Troy. He's a sanitation worker, and him questions. I say it was beautiful. I might probably have to play it next week, but they're working on the garbage truck, and he's being questioned by his non-white friend, black male, about whether he's going to get in trouble and is he going to get fired because you've been down there getting at them white people. And he said, fire me for what? All I did was ask a question. Are white people the only employees capable of driving a truck? Do black people have to stay on the back of the truck to do the garbage? Is that in the rules? Question. Didn't make any statements. He just asked two questions. He said, how am I going to get fired for asking a question? I said, oh my God, they are listening to workplace racism on the cows. But I will have to put that in. It comes up quite a few times throughout the film. Workplace racism, black people having trouble on the job. You can just expect that in the system of white supremacy. I will again emphasize, and it's just for this program, this is not a program to spectate. You can go to the movies if you need to catch Rogue One, Fences, Hidden Figures, whatever it is. You can go to the movies and spectate. Counter-racism is not about spectating, and particularly workplace racism. That is something that everybody, it should not be that we just have people who hang out and lollygag for this program to just, I just want to hear what these folks have to say. It's so entertaining. This is great while I wait for Scandal, to come back, or whatever I'd be doing with my Thursday. That should not be workplace racism. I think any black person in particular, if you're non-white, period, Mr. Wong, if you're non-white, if you have worked at all or think that you might have to do some work, even if it's having your own business, racism, white supremacy is still going to be a problem for you. I mean, even if you become president, racism, white supremacy is still going to be a problem for you on the job. There should be no way that we have people listening to this program and saying, wow, that's so interesting. All of these different experiences. I've never had any of these problems. I've never seen any of these issues. I submit that it's just not possible. Dr. Welsing used to say that all the time, even if it's reflecting, even if things are, relatively calm on your job right now, nobody, is messing with you and sabotaging your work area or messing up your work schedule. So you're coming in different hours each and every day and never knowing when you're going to work. Even if things are relatively peaceful right now, you have had a job in your existence where you have experienced racism. Even if you didn't know that was the case then, I think that is constructive. In fact, I would encourage, that's one of the ways that I think we can make progress with workplace racism. Just reflect on our own work experience. We're all still learning. So you can look at the time. Okay, I was more confused then. I had white friends. I was going to the Christmas parties and getting drunk or whatever. I wasn't codified. And this is what happened in this situation. These are the things that I would do differently. These are things that I would say. These are things that I would not say. These are things I would do, things I would not do, that I think would give a drastically different outcome for how things evolved when I was more confused. Just reflecting. And you can use, this platform as well. I know it's not the most proud moment to talk about times where we were terrorized or confused or our finances and career in jeopardy based on things that racists have done to us on the job. But I think just reflecting on that, I think we can develop strategies, we can learn from it. And I think it's very helpful for other victims of racism to hear, no, this is not anything that is specific to you. It's nothing defective about you. It's nothing incompetent about you. White people are dedicated to practicing racism, and they do a lot of the same things. They employ a lot of the same techniques. They even have conference calls and what have you, and swap techniques about how to abuse their niggers. They've been doing this for years, and Edward Baptist, again, because he has that explicitly in his text, the half has never been told about whites getting together to swap stories about, ways to punish and abuse niggers, managing the plantation. With that, the number again, 641-715-3640. The code 564943 pound. Press star 6 if you would like to participate. Same as always, if you are not able to participate or if you, for whatever reason, are not able to call in, but if you want to share via email, the email is untiljustice@gmail.com. Drop me an email and we can read it anonymously, whatever your situation is. We can read anonymously on the program and get feedback from callers, myself, or just, if it's something that you just think listeners should think about. If folks have thoughts going into the new year, as they say, about things that you're working on, if you have goals in terms of your counter-racist code for the workplace, that would be grand to hear as well. Everyone who dialed in with a hand up, lines should be open. Feel free to chime in.
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Greetings, beautiful people. This is 1842. But also, just before I start talking about other stuff, you can also call me Emma. That's fine, too, just so I'm not going by a number. I've been participating in the cows for a little time now, so it's just weird being a number all the time. But anyway, at any rate, I'll kind of echo what Gus said, just because I think it's something that's been, it has been something that's absolutely transformative for me towards the end of 2016, and as I prepare to enter into the next 365. I don't know everyone who's ever listened and all of that kind of good stuff, but I was shy at first sharing, but even not knowing exactly what to say or thinking others might judge me, I would just extend it and say that out of all of the people that I've spoken with and listened to, I don't think that they would judge. So I would definitely encourage people who may be on the other end and just haven't dialed in to share or introduce yourself or anything. I would say do so. If in 2017 don't feel funny at all. I think that they're a wonderful group of people who would be happy to listen and provide any constructive feedback that they can. With that, I'll give you a couple of notes that I took over some of the things that I've been going through. But if there's time much later, because I'm currently not at the house and I don't have my hands on my journal, I would like to share. Gus once mentioned revisiting some of these traumatic experiences that we've had and thinking about them and writing them out and saying, what happened, what we did, how we felt, what we would do now with our codification and things like that. And I took him up on that because I had one experience, which I did share with y'all, but that was so piecemeal because it just came to me. I hadn't sat down and actually opened up the compartmentalization I had done and really pulled out. So it took me days because I couldn't even take it. I sat it down and came back just because it was so much. I'd be right. I was like, oh yeah, this person did this, and oh yeah, this person said this. So if there's time much later, and if you all are willing, I'd be happy to share a little bit of that traumatic experience because it definitely made me feel so much better, so much more secure in myself. For many reasons, and so much more clear because I had revisited that situation. But I don't have the journal, so I can't do it right now. Okay, so I told you all that I'm leaving, so I was nervous, but I put in my 2 weeks. I let everybody know. I know I had been practicing a codification that when it finally came out, didn't, like when people asked me the question, that codification kind of went out the window. It was more linear than how I swung it. But I still haven't told anybody where I'm going or what I'm doing, which I think is the foundation of my codification. That's no one's business. And so however people ask, depending on who that person is, it just comes out like, I'm not telling y'all where I'm going. That's my personal business. And if they pursue, then I get the serious voice and I say, no, it's my business and I don't have to tell anyone what I'm doing or where I'm going. And then I just look at them. And that's the beginning and the end. Non-white or white, I don't care. I don't need anyone, even the people that think they know me. A couple of things, and ever since I did that, it's funny because, I told them in person, I'm contracted, so I told the property management company in person. I wasn't going to, but I told them, and it was just like silence. And what I realized, like, I won't go into it because I don't want to take up too much time, but what I realized in that moment is that I had already known they were lying to me, but it solidified that people are not going to pay you if you're doing anything for free. They will milk that to the end. Now that they know I'm leaving, there's all this talk of, well, can we get you to stay? Maybe we can do a virtual concierge situation if you can at least come in once a week. Maybe we can do this. Maybe we can do that. And, I've resigned and resolved to be done 100%. I'm open to exploring possibilities because I'm in it's not necessarily powerful, but I'm in a more strategic position to negotiate what could potentially work well for me. However, if this doesn't, I'm good moving on and doing what it is that I'm ready to do. And so it was very interesting because the way that they began to treat me. One day, I wasn't supposed to be in the building, but I was there because I was running errands in the city, and the assistant came in and spoke with the security officer and was like, what is she doing here? An earshot of me and everything. And I was like, excuse me? Wow, didn't even speak to me. And now no one speaks to me. Like, they're not saying good morning or anything like that. I don't care. That's to be expected. And it doesn't faze me at all. I just wanted to share that. And then one thing I will confess to you on the line, I make it an attempt to be as transparent as possible. What I realized in this entire process, because I told you I had a lot of anxiety. I had a lot of anxiety about each part of it, from like really just making the step, really doing it, believing that I could do it, to letting my company know, because I'm contracted, letting my company know, talking with the property managers. Like, I was avoiding all morning, like the entire thing. And it just solidified for me, clarified for me the level of my own programming, the level of my own indoctrination, especially fear around what if I can't do this, or what if this turns out badly, or even something as like infantile as what if they're mad at me or they don't like me anymore, despite what I know about white people or my own personal conclusions about white people, despite my clarification and understanding of racism, white supremacy. These are thoughts that I was generally having, and I was talking with people as much as I could to kind of get over it, and doing a lot of personal work and things like that to make sure that, no, screw that. I'm going to fighting my own programming, but it was there. And now that it's done, I'm definitely far more confident. My level of Black self-respect is much improved. But another thing that I'll advise to any young people who might be listening, in the past when things would hit the fan, because I never really rocked with white people anyway, so I would get frustrated, and what would happen is each time, and I observed this in my journaling, each time I would leave that situation, but I would burn that bridge. I would burn the whole thing down. There was no, so I really couldn't use that reference or that, all that experience. And so at this time, I did it correctly. I asked people older than me for advice. I took the constructive feedback that I got from Cow's listeners and Gus, and I did it what I consider to be the correct way, as I think Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. would say, doing it the proper, the professional way, being courteous, putting things in writing, just being very, very professional about it. So even as their animosity is high, I remain professional, and it's it may not be the most powerful piece, but it is definitely empowering to do it the correct way. They could still choose not to give me an outstanding recommendation or whatever, but it won't be because we had a blowout and I was completely uncodified and everything hit the fan and it was just so dramatic. And I mean, and I've had that experience a couple times because I'm fiery by nature, and when I get frustrated, that's it. And next thing you know, all is lost, all of that time. And the older you get, the harder it is to build on, because people are like, what's up with all these gaps? We can't talk to this person, you know. So for the young people, like, if a situation is not good and you know you have to leave, I would recommend that you strategize and that you do it the proper way. And if you're not sure what the proper way is, I would say chime into the cows, ask people who are professional, who are older than you, Google it, ask for the help that you need so that you can make sure that you have a solid resume, that you have a solid work history. As it gets harder to find employment, I think that is just a very powerful strategic place to be. And this is the first time I can tell you, and I'm in my late 20s, like the first time that I've done it the right way, and it feels so good. 2 weeks, that's it. Find somebody, I'll train them. If not, it's whatever. I'm clearing my stuff. I'm out. Peace. Thank you. It was great. Bam. And it's over. And it feels good. And I wanted to share that. And then the last thing that I'll share is Gus mentions this on a couple of the other calls that we've had about just taking some notes. Even, it doesn't have to be like a whole 10-page journal entry, but I've made it a point in 2017. You all can hold me accountable just because I have at least told you so. I'll hold myself accountable. I take notes every night. I don't care if I'm dead tired when I get in the bed. I'm like, this happened, this happened, this happened, about my day in general, but also about what I observed about white people, specifically in the workplace, because the older I get, I don't want to continue to make the same mistakes. I don't want to be a fool and regressing or anything. I just want to build. So that's one of the things that I have been consistent with every day. I have my journal, my not fancy, but colorful gel pens, and I'm like writing my notes and I make it a thing. And that way it can also link my memory so that I don't have gaps and I don't feel like I need to compartmentalize, and I can make sure that the traumas that I experience, whether they're microaggressive or, obtuse, are noted, and I'm not going crazy, and I'm secure in knowing that I'm attending to reality. I'm here, this is what's happening, and next. So thank you all. If there's time later, I'll share. I hope everyone is well. Thank you for letting me share.
Right on, Emmy. Did we miss someone? Was someone speaking up?
May I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Greetings, Gus, and to the listeners of Lamine from Kansas City. I wanted to share my experience from my workplace, being self-employed. It's always a roller coaster. Every single week is different, and there's always some other white foolery that I'm having to deal with. Before I got started with my experiences, I just wanted to say, for me, I do appreciate the previous caller, the small victories. I just feel good to hear. I think I had that experience too, where I had to go about it in a more methodical way as opposed to storming out and cursing everyone out. It's not a good strategy for non-white people, specifically black people, because the system will always take retribution or action, punitive action, for that, as it already does on a daily basis. So it just compounds our issues and not creating more problems. I've also been trying to remember to get to sleep earlier. That has helped me to be more clear and alert the next day, as opposed to going to sleep late at night. I've been targeting 10 p.m. I haven't been hitting it every single day, but just being mindful of it has allowed me to get more sleep and to wake up to be productive earlier. Some people are better in the morning. I'm not really. So it's been really good for me to be alert to deal with white dominators and be conscious of what's going on, as opposed to being tired. So I just wanted to give that to any other listeners. I have a client who I've spoken about previously. It's a South African woman. It just continues on. I believe it's probably at this point, maybe a form of like subtle, if not open, abuse. But she keeps calling me back to do work. So apparently, I do good work, so I'm being called back to do work. The work is usually easy money that is very difficult to say no to. Of course, the dilemma of being self-employed or working for a employer. We always seem to find ourselves in this position. But I was called back to do some work and to hang a television, to be specific. And her husband happened to be there, and I'd never met her husband before. This is the hunter who likes to hang dead animals in the house. He was there working. I, walk in, very cordial with him. Don't speak, just get to work. He made some comments, nothing specifically towards me, but she had told me that her husband was a Afrikaan, a Boer to be specific, and he held his Boer cultural identity extremely important, very close to him. So basically, to me, that just told me he was a very refined / brutal white supremacist, given the histories of the Boers in South Africa. He made a few jokes regarding his wife. I didn't say anything. I kept it short. I was able to leave the encounter without any issue. And again, she gave me another story about him in the past in South Africa. But she did share with me a specific story when we were talking about, she said she's a part of a group called the Pantsuit Nation, which I believe they're Hillary Clinton supporters, and mostly white women. And she felt that they were worried. She went to a few meetings and she was explaining this to me because our conversations always seem to devolve into race, which I find interesting. But with white people, I really don't think there's anything else they'd rather talk about. That has been my experience. So this conversation evolved into race, and she told me about her joining the Pantsuit Nation to try to help counter the influence of Donald Trump. Essentially, she felt that racism had taken over in the country almost like it had in South Africa in the past. Then she proceeded to tell me why she felt so strongly about racism, because the first time she had a racist experience was when she was 15 years old and a black dignitary student became her best friend in South Africa, and how she could not get into the movie theater with her black friend when she was 15. Now, she's 50 years old. So if you just do the math, that means that this woman was, this was 35 years ago when this incident happened, mid or so 80s, and how she was not allowed to enter the movie theater with her black friend, quote unquote, black friend. That really told me two things I got from that. One, this woman is obviously practicing racism because she did not understand racism for the first time at 15 years of age. Blatant act of deception. And secondly, she was being reminded. It wasn't like the system was telling her, no, you can't bring that note. The person at the theater was just reminding her how she should behave, again, reinforcing that white people are not ignorant of the system. She supposedly lamented the situation and stuck with her for the rest of her life. What I did take away from this conversation, I did develop a new code that I will not explain my thoughts on racism, white supremacy to a white dominator. It is futile. My reasoning is it's futile for a non-white person to attempt to explain their thoughts on racism to a white person, because white people know the system better than any non-white person could know, since we're in a system of racism, white supremacy. It's not necessarily a eureka moment for many people listening, but I believe that was extremely important to me to understand. I should never be explaining my thoughts on racism. I should be listening to them, but never explaining my thoughts. I asked her if she was going. I asked her if she was going to the White Privilege Conference, which I believe is being held in Kansas City this year. I wish to attend a few sessions. If anybody who's listening might be coming to Kansas City for that, I want to attend a few sessions. I've never been to one before. She said that she was interested and likely will. She is in academia. My next experience, my final experience, is with a client who is a gay white man, quote unquote gay white man. He's from Indiana. He has a non-white partner. And today, for the first time, I met his non-white partner while doing a repair at his home. Extremely cheery, supposedly cheery, non-white black male. They're cordial to me. They're kind to me. I'm always leery of that type of behavior, specifically from white people. He did tell me that he was going to go to the White Privilege Conference this year because he is a quote-unquote advocate for LGBTQ rights, and he fights for them, he speaks for them. And he also was a Christian minister. He was a former Christian minister, as was I. So sometimes our conversation, he started bringing up politics. I think I was under the sink working on something. He started bringing up politics and Trump. Of course, he strongly about Trump, and he started talking to me about how afraid he was of what he's going to do, and he felt afraid for the first time, which I believe is not being truthful. I believe he's saying that we're behind on civil rights. He kept saying that we're behind on civil rights, and we're in the civil rights period. We're going into the second phase of it, which again, I believe just wasn't being truthful and was trying to practice deception with me. The conversation it really broke down when I told him, he told me that he believes the world is coming to an end like the Bible says. And I said that I believe the war of Armageddon was actually the war to destroy white supremacy. And he stopped and looked at me, paused, shocked that I would say something so short and so poignant. And I believe he understood. He was in shock because he believed the assumption that he would be included in those destroyed as a person who was practicing racism, a white person. It's interesting to watch the expressions of the dominators when they're talking to us, and I believe that that's a very important part of what all non-white people should be doing in their daily codification, specifically when watching their expressions carefully and not just throwing words at them. It's helped me to be more cognizant that when they're practicing racism actively, and try to remove myself from the situation and other interventions on a daily basis when I notice that's happening. I'll take my call off the line. Thank you.
Very interesting. I will just get in briefly in terms of your, I think you said, for listeners, it might not be a eureka moment or what have you, but it was for you just, improving your codification as you go along to not explain your feelings or thoughts to racists. I completely agree. There's just no point to it at all. White people are not ignorant about racism, and whatever you say is not going to get them to stop terrorizing black people, non-white people. So absolutely, I agree with that completely. And I think there have even been some times when we've had whites on the program and they asked me to explain something and I refused to do so. And it wasn't, like a big to-do. It was just, no, that's not something I engage in. Next question. Doesn't have to be a big production. You can just keep it moving on to the next thing. In fact, one of the ratios I use when I'm talking to white people to make sure I'm not talking too much or just trying to give all my thoughts and feelings, I should be asking more questions than making statements. If I'm not asking a lot of questions, probably not doing a good job controlling compensatory conversation control, I think is the way Mr. Fuller calls it. To the last point, I guess since you're working in these people's residences and what have you, so that shifts things drastically as opposed to like being in an office setting or on a construction site or wherever else when the work environment is actually that racist's residence, their house. I would probably still say I would make sure I'm not the person bringing up racism, and I probably still would not share any of my thoughts or views on racism. That's just a pretty staple part of my code to not talk about racism on the job. If others bring it up and they want to say whatever they say, great. The most I might do is ask a question, but I generally think it's the route to go I found to minimize conflict, to make sure that I'm not the one talking about racism at all on the job, around white people or non-white people. Other folks that we have not heard from, if you have questions about what you've heard thus far, or if you have your own situation you would like to discuss, line should be open. Feel free. No spectating.
Greetings, Clubber.
Yes, sir.
I think I heard the last caller mention about proper rest and kind of like conditioning oneself to go to bed to get your rest at a constructive or prompt time, so you can have maximum amount of energy and alertness during the course of the time on your job. That is absolutely true. Something to do, make it a habit, because it would be very vital in assisting you to get through if you were on a job like mine, that had a retirement process, it would very much assist you into getting to that point as fluid as possible. Very, very, very valuable thing that he brought up as far as that concerned. Something that seems to be quite simple, but yet a lot of people don't really focus on it probably like they should. I myself would make that mistake every now and then when I was kind of like in my 20s or 30s, that sort of thing every night. But I did make a habit. Of being in the bed at a particular certain time, somewhere around 10, 11 o'clock, because of the job that I retired from. You are to be on duty about 7 a.m. To relieve the person that is already on during that 24 hours. And of course, on a job like that, you kind of like want to be in your best of mental and physical understanding and behavior, because things can happen as you approach the station. The alarm can go off. That's actually happened quite a few times, and you're literally running to the truck because with the person that you're relieving, you don't want them to have to go on a call, and they're supposed to be off duty because if it's something like a fire, you probably could be there for hours as far as they're concerned, and so very important. But anyway, to my workplace racism, this is considered to be as a football coach, kind of like the off season. But then again, when it comes to sports on the interscholastic and collegiate and professional level, there's almost no such thing as no off season. Theoretically, there's always something to do at this point in time, and this is the reason why. I think I heard you say in the beginning of the program about mentioning about successes and whatnot. Well, here's success. This is primarily the reason why I coach football, other than liking the sport itself and how it's benefited me. I transferred that background into participating in the process of getting young people, especially young black males. That's primarily who I've been working with for almost 30 years now as a high school football coach into college, just like I did back in the 1970s. And we're up to now, I think it's about 6 or 7, and actually the signing day has not even occurred. It doesn't really occur until February the 2nd. But already we've had at least 6 to 8 players who have not only have signed their contracts to go to college, but they're leaving to go. They've already left. Some of them already left because they've graduated early. There's a process that you can take advantage of. So you can actually, instead of graduating in the spring, at the end of the semester, you actually can graduate during what is called the winter break, and by the spring you're at your college. You're at your college that you have signed with. And we've already had about 6 to 8 student athletes who have went through that process. Now, here is something not strange, that is not encouraged by a lot of administrators. The only one that I know is not encouraged by are not they are white people. It's not encouraged for the ones who don't encourage that. but it's a good thing for many reasons other than just football. There are a lot of guys who are have finished their college credits and whatnot, and have already gotten their college degree, and with that last year of scholarship, they're actually going to graduate school, that sort of thing. But anyway, other than that, this past, what day was that? Yesterday, had a event to whereas two of them, and they do it in like I guess you call it a grand scale. I really don't like it, but I went just to support to see them sign the contracts, but at a restaurant, and it's a lot of people there, family, the newspaper, that sort of thing. I try to not draw any attention to myself or anything like that. So when people want to take pictures and whatnot, that sort of thing, I basically just say no. It's not about me. It's about the young people and whatnot and what they have accomplished, that sort of thing, and just watch the process happen. But I asked this here is actually a problem because there's so much hype with sports in this part of the world, and I guess it's all over the world, especially where white people at. But I know it is over here, and especially with football. There's too much emphasis placed on it, as opposed to what you can gain with your athletic talents other than football. So I asked one of the guys a question: well, what are your interests? What are your interests other than football? And he hesitated in it, which is, to me, is a problem, about hesitating on some interest other than football. I say, well, I tell you what, by you hesitating, that tells me that you need to think about it. So I tell you what, think about it. It'll be important for you to think about it because one day you're not going to be able to play football. Think about it and be able to, while you're in college, make up your mind to have some other interests. So you can transition from playing a sport to doing something else. But anyway, those are my experiences this past week in the workplace. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Retired firefighter in Florida, and great emphasis on the importance of being well rested, just under the system, period, but particularly going into the workplace. You want to make sure you are alert, brain computer operating at the optimal level. Adequate rest is important for that. And that football thing, great question you asked those young folks as well, because football is one of those things where I guess any sport, but especially football, your football career could end very abruptly. Unfortunately, that does happen for a lot of people because there's so many injuries. It's so violent that is absolutely critical. Other folks that we have not heard from at all. If you dialed in, you have a hand up. We have not heard from you.
May I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Oh, hi. First time caller. I've been listening to you guys for approximately a year, but I've been binge listening from your first episode until today. So I will go by Great American. I sent you a Facebook note about workplace racism. I think you guys did it last week, if I'm not mistaken.
Can you refresh us on just kind of the details of what you were talking about last week?
Last week I sent you a note about workplace racism, and I recently got into this job. It's a trucking industry. I've been there for about 4 months, and they kept badgering me about going to the Christmas party. And once I finally agreed to go to the Christmas party,
the children were running around terrorizing everyone? Is that
yeah,
true?
The children, yes. And the crazy thing is that we actually worked that day, And I came in about 5:30. Was supposed to start at 6, and I get there at 5:30. Most of the people are there, but they're drunk already. And I'm like, how are you drunk already? We just got off work. And, beyond that, most of this is driving and logistics. So you're going to leave a driving job going off drinking. So, I found that to be a problem. So once I got there, I just looked around and trying to figure out who was there, what everybody's activities were. But I just wanted to be here to comment on that workplace racism. If you needed any additional information, I'm asked for my code. I go in, I go to work, I get off, I speak when spoken to, I greet with hands, I say hello, I leave it short. My conversation with white people is, you speak to me, I'll speak to you. I'll say yes, sir, or no, sir, after you say yes, sir, or no, sir to me. That's pretty much how I work. And I don't have much of a problem because of that, because everybody knows I'm pretty standoffish, or, what they would try to do. You don't smile, you don't this, you don't that. And I keep it business. I keep it professional. I tell them, like, hey, I need to be to a point where I'm focused on what I'm doing, and all the extra stuff, I try to avoid that, so I don't get into a bunch of conversations with them, because they're nosy as I don't know what. They want to know your inner workings. They want to know all your business, your family business, everything about your job, and I just don't give them anything. I let them talk. I sit back and listen, and I leave out without them knowing. So that's pretty much how I handle the workplace racism. But as for this Christmas party, it was, like I said, about 140 people there working with the company, so nearly everyone showed up. But
how many black people?
Alcohol,
or non-white people?
Roughly about non-white people. Roughly about 10 were there. And the crazy thing about it, like I said, I was one of the first black people there. So there was another guy that was there that I noticed, but he was sitting by the door, so I came back by the door to sit with him. And we were at a big 6-person table by ourselves, just standoffish and looking and observing everything, and seeing the inner workings of how people interact with each other. But it seems like every black guy that came in, they specifically went to a sector of white people, and I could not understand that. And the first thing they did was grab a beer or grab some type of mixed drink, and then went to cursing at each other, and it was fun, and it was laughter. I'm like, are you serious? And I really didn't see any need for all of that. I mean, we all at work. Then the cursing and the drinking would always lead to something else, especially when you're dealing with those people. So, I just sat back and watched. I didn't drink anything. We had dinner. I ate a little, but when the kids came out, that's when it really got crazy for me. They came out of the office. It was like maybe 3, but it was one in particular. It was like a 4-year-old, and he was running and bumping and grabbing on everybody, just being all erratic and everything. And I'm like, what is this boy doing? So he finally got to the table where myself and another black guy was sitting, and he just walked up to us like very slow, like Jason or something. I don't know. Well, not like Jason. He just walked up to us slow, and he had this plain autistic look on his face, and he slowly kept walking towards us. He walked around me. The guy that was sitting with me, he was to my left side, and he shot him in the face with a finger. And after he shot him in the face, he just stared at him. And myself and the guy looked at each other like, he was like, I can't believe that. I said, I can. and he sprinted off to one of the women, and that was enough for me. Like I stated before in the letter, there are guns on the premises. I found that out when I first got there. There's everybody carries a pistol. I would assume, if not 100%, I would assume 80% at least carry a pistol. I've seen them myself, so I know this. Even inside the office with the supervisors, like I said, it's a family company, so they're brothers. There's, animal heads all over the wall, and Trump stickers, and rebel and Civil War nostalgia, and all of this stuff. So you pretty much know where you are, but it just dumbfounded me that these other 8 black men had no clue of what they were dealing with. So I just call to just be more direct with the letter, and let you know that, let the guests and the listeners know that how I got through that situation was just to leave. I felt the situation was becoming volatile. It wasn't a place for me. It wasn't a place that I cared to be. So I just politely excused myself, and that was it. So that's all I have for workplace racism.
Grand. Great decision to exit the premises once you didn't feel comfortable, didn't feel safe, particularly if you got alcohol and firearms in addition to whites. I mean, it does not get any more lethal. That is fantastic decision. I think the little 4-year-old that you saw it, Dylan Roof 2.0 in training. And I mean, I was thinking seriously, like, yes, Dylan Roof 2.0. That's what you should have in mind. Whites are, out training their toddlers with firearms on a regular basis. And I guess just the other quick comment to get in, because I know you were saying, like, on the job, you just keep it business. Hey, I got to stay focused. I don't have time for a lot of that extra unnecessary chit chat. I know for a lot of victims, they've talked about that ending up being a problem where, I mean, even to the point of being written up saying, you doesn't seem like you're a part of the family. You don't talk to us. We don't hear, you're not a good fit. That's the type of thing that they'll say. That's the type of language, that you're not a good fit for the culture that we have here, because, we like to laugh and joke around, be on a first name basis. We've had so many black people who have, had all over the world who've had problems with that. Like, just anything quickly that you could share in terms of how you've been able to make sure that doesn't become a problem, that you can just be quiet, do your work, and they leave you alone?
Well, I guess one of my the better attributes I have is my demeanor, I suppose. I was with the Department of Corrections and riot safety for about 9 years, and most white people that meet me think that I'm military, which I'm not. I sort of despise all of that. I see, no good in that. Just going out killing people you never met for no reason, just because someone told you so. So they think I'm military. So I guess that gives them, I guess that closes the barrier for them to think that I'm friendly, since we have so much affection for the military that's fake affection. But before I got hired, I spoke with the owner, one of the older brothers, and we discussed pay, we discussed how long we work, we discussed what days we work, so on and so forth. And everything was to my liking, and what I told them, they agreed with that. But I just made it clear that I'm not working any weekends, and if I do, it needs to be an emergency, and you need to let me know. I'm just coming in to do my job, because I'm just doing what's expected of me. So let them know I'm not working any weekends. That tells them exactly I'm not doing anything extra, no more than what I'm getting paid for. So there's no need to ask me. And they tried to the first 2 months, and I declined. And how the way I declined, I asked them. I said, "Well, is it required of me to work this weekend? Because if not, I'd rather spend that time with my family, considering this is a family business." And they left me alone after that. So I sort of set the table, I would think. That's probably how.
Asking questions, always great. And I think, or at least to me, that reminds me of what Raj shared. It's probably some months back at this point, just about kind of letting white people know up front that, hey, I'm appreciative for being able to be a part of this organization and looking forward to being a valuable asset, and let's all be in to prosper together. But I just don't do a lot of frivolous chit chat. It's just not my personality. I'm down to help anybody that's on the team here. Let me know what I can do to be of assistance, and I will try my best. But I just don't, do a whole lot of the, hey, and let's talk about where we went shopping. I just don't do all that. Good morning, good evening. Let me know if you need something, but that's just not my personality. He said just kind of letting folks know that up front had helped a lot with him. So I kind of say that to other folks as well. Just kind of establish that up front, letting people know, and still being courteous, but just that I'm just not a chatty person. That's just my demeanor. Now let's get some work done, and that can be helpful, it seems. Other folks that we have not heard from, if you have questions for any of the folks who chimed in thus far about what they shared, or if you have your own situation that you want to discuss, your line should be open. Folks we have not heard from at all.
Can I be heard?
Heard both of you. Let's see. Mr. Steele, you want to go first?
Sure. I just wanted to say thanks for all the contributors that have called in thus far. I especially like the story that was told by 1842. I think making a good exit from any employment situation that you've been in is really, really, really important, especially as you're building up a work history. You want them to be able to call and talk to somebody to verify that, hey, you're not going to be a problem. And if they are able to determine that you're going to be a problem, you probably won't hear back from any prospective employer. But I will say, just as for tips for victims of white supremacy that have, I guess, found themselves in a situation where they do have holes or gaps in their employment history. If you do have any, to kind of mitigate for that, if you do have anybody that is in your social circle that can sound like management, I would suggest using those numbers and those people as references. And I would suggest that if you do use these people, make sure that they have LinkedIn profiles that go ahead and verify their employment, because that's pretty much how people are going to verify. They're typically going to go on LinkedIn and to, kind of check to see, is that person actually a manager? Does this name match up? And that's if they go that deep into their due diligence. Also, I will say, just a suggestion to victims of racism that are looking for employment, and you have your resume. On your resume, please, please, please write out what it is that you did at each position. Your job title at each of those positions does not speak to any of the experiences that you had. And you can go ahead and, a pro tip, if there's a particular job that you're looking at and you're looking and it's of interest to you, they'll tell you basically what they want to see from you. So in the job description. So if you want your resume to stand out use the key words that they have identified in the job posting. And you can even, at each one of your job descriptions, you can write out how each one of those must-haves, each one of those must requirements you've applied or you've met at each one of those positions. It saddens me to see so many victims of racism. They think that, hey, because I have a document that has my name and some jobs on it, this is a sufficient resume. I just want to say that it's not going to show up in any searches. It's not going to pop up when a recruiter or some sort of HR professional is looking and skimming. And if you don't tell a story that, or just a list of how you knocked out every single one of the tasks that they identified that you're going to be doing in one of your previous positions, you're just not going to get that call. So also, be able to speak to every single thing that's on your resume. I've seen victims of racism in situations where they may have things on their resume that they say that they're competent or proficient in, and when it comes to being able to speak to those skills, being able to talk through some of the scenarios that those skills are applied in, they just falling short. So I don't know if the situation is that, people are embellishing what they have, the skills that they have, or if they just have poor communication skills. But please be able to speak to every single thing that you see on your resume. I just can't stress that enough. Recruiters and frontline people, frontline HR professionals, they're going to be the ones that are skimming through this, and we're going to make the thumbs up or the thumbs down, and just make their job easy. Use those keywords. Speak to everything that that particular job posting has, and just make sure that you have that have that down. And that's just some brief resume tips. A lot of people, I don't know if people know this or not, but another thing that I do, or I guess what I do, is comedy. So one thing that I've noticed, one thing that I guess observed in this particular workspace is that racism is expected and it's celebrated, and it is oftentimes framed as jokes. So I run into situations that are just, and people that say boldly racist things, and I guess, because they're comedians, it's okay. And I've just been noticing that, there's these secret groups that people who call themselves comedians form on the internet, and they go ahead and they discuss different targets that they have. They have targeted discussions about who are they going to take down, who are they going to focus on. And this week, I've noticed that victims of racism were targeting a person named Dan Ninian or something like that. I don't know. I'm not familiar with this comedian, but apparently he is half what they call Indian and half what they call Japanese. So a lot of his jokes are based on that, and apparently he was embellishing his age and playing the media, the PR game. And some comedians were just bad-mouthing this person. And then I noticed that they were going to different corporate interests that he had, and they were going through and saying, this is why you should not work with this person, and this is why you should not work with this person. And I pointed out how, I was just, going back and forth with some of these people, and I pointed out that, hey, this person's career is here and yours is there. Maybe you should go and read this guy's book and see, exactly what steps you should take to become better comedians. They responded by going ahead and searching through my old posts and finding ones that they found objectionable and going ahead and posting them all over the internet, telling people, don't work with these people. I'm in a new market, So they're going and trying to convince the people in this new market that I'm some sort of bad guy or something like that. And this is just something that I've noticed in the workplace of, I guess, comedy. I don't know if well, I guess if you're in the, and speaking of, if you're in the, Los Angeles area, I'm going to be at a place called the Pack Theater on Santa Monica Boulevard on Friday night, where I will be, I guess, co-hosting or a panelist on some talent shows. So go ahead and, I guess, on Facebook, I'm Ken Steele, and you can see my Facebook profile page. You can see the event there. So I guess that's my workplace racism for this week. Just some tips on how to improve your resume, and check me out.
Appreciate that. Caller in Florida, it was a different caller in Florida. You spoke up simultaneously. Were you going to share as well?
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Oh, this is 2812 in Virginia. Well, I'll just get right to it. Today was I'll just call it a difficult day, because I came to a couple of honest realizations with myself. Had an incident with a coworker. I had mentioned this older white woman a couple of weeks ago. I hope everybody can hear me. Where she was the one that asked me when I had mentioned to her that I was going out of the country, and she said, "Do you want to just leave the country because of Trump?" And I had asked her a question. Today she came into the office. We had an office meeting with the manager again. There's 3 people in the office. The manager left the room. She made a comment in reference to the reason why she was late to the meeting was because of she was listening to something about Russian hackers and 1842, who dropped so much knowledge and said, "Don't discuss politics." And I think I was typing something, and I probably wasn't even paying attention. And I think I said something like, "Why is that important?" And she said, "What do you mean, why is that important? Why would that not be important?" And I can't remember what I said, but when the other white manager left the room, it was her and I, and someone walked by and asked a question. She then spoke up after the person walked by and said, "Yeah, I'd like to smack such and such." And she was talking to me. And I looked at her, and she looked at me, and we had already had tension, but what I realized is that she doesn't take me seriously. And that was a huge eye-opening experience for me. I was really embarrassed, and I was like, wow. My manager, I don't want to say treats me with respect because he's still a suspected racist, but we have a cordial relationship simply because of the fact that I'm more productive in reference to what I do, in reference to volume and the amount of transactions that I do. But that was really bothersome. So then we had to go out for lunch together. And on the way back from lunch, the lunch was fine. We really just cordial talk, but I was really embarrassed just sitting there. On the way back, she was listening to probably WFA, whatever the news station was. And at first they were talking about Donald Trump being sued. And she turned the radio up. Like, oh, I got to hear this. And I'm sitting in the front seat next to this woman that's already insulted me. Then they started to discuss Dylan Roof. And I'm telling you, she turned the radio down. Almost to the level to where you couldn't hear it. And as soon as that snippet was over, she turned it back up. And she was sick, and she left. And for some reason, maybe the other white manager that was with us after she left the office, he said, "Hey, I want to talk to you tomorrow about Barbara." And I said, "Okay." And then he left. And so my question for the listeners is that should I address her comment or should I let it go? I do not want to get into a confrontation with an older white woman. I really don't. But I do want her to know that I thought it was inappropriate. So if anybody has any suggestions on how I should handle that, or if I should, I would appreciate it. The other thing I realized today after that comment was, in my business, I have to speak a lot and I have to do a lot, and I've come to the realization that, you know, a lot of my years I've been being showcased. And some of it is for my ability, but a lot of it is for my personality, particularly when I'm teaching classes. I'm very effective with non-white people, and even some people that are classified as white. They don't just take me as a joke. They actually, after classes, ask questions, and I built a lot of relationships. That's how I do my business. But after today's incident and just doing a lot of self-reflecting, the reason why a lot of this came up is I listen to old Kyle's episodes every day, and the one that I listened to this afternoon after this incident was the January 2015 with Dr. Welsing, when Gus had mentioned about black people laughing when things aren't funny, and I observed my own behavior, and I realized that sometimes I do that, and in being more serious as well. And what I'm trying to figure out is how to teach my classes and to be more serious, but to still be effective. Because specifically with non-white people, one of my ways of being effective is that I can tell that they're going through things and they're having trouble understanding, and I really do a very effective job of lightening the mood so they can learn a little bit better. Because sometimes they just have trouble, but I'm just trying to understand to have a balance of not always just being entertaining or being showcased even when you realize you are, but just being serious at the job. And that's all I have to share. Thank you.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
To the previous caller, I'll say this. Perhaps you want to consider videotaping some of your classes. Because if you're being showcased specifically, and more so than people that you notice around you, that means there's something there that they're finding worth showcasing. So you can leverage that, turn that into something more lucrative for yourself and more worth all the trouble that you're having to endure. Because even if you go the route of a paid speaker or some sort of freelance teacher or instructor, you're still going to have to deal with these situations, but you're going to be able to make it more worth your while by charging more money for your services. You're being showcased for a reason. So find out what it is by videotaping yourself, and perhaps that can be leveraged into more money for yourself. And consider getting an agent, because you're being showcased for a reason. So find out what it is.
The guy that you were going to speak to about this racist woman's behavior, is this a white person or a non-white person, you said?
He came, Gus, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
He approached me.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even mention it. I didn't mention the incident to him at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he's been observational on just some of her tacky conduct. And I'm more productive. I understand my job a lot better. I don't ask as many questions.
Is he white or non-white?
But yes, he is. Yeah, yes. But that's what I mentioned. He is a white person.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That's one of those. Particularly if he's come up, you said he volunteered to speak to you, like you didn't seek him out to have some sort of conversation about her behavior or to get his thoughts or anything. He sought you out and said that he wanted to, I guess, share a word about this white woman. I would be very cautious with that conversation. You know these people. You've been working there for a while, but I think I've told someone this before. I would be very... putting it mildly, I would be very leery about going and talking to another white person or even another non-white person on the job about any situation with anybody else there, whether they did something incorrect to me. If I'm the one, I'm being accused of having done something incorrect to them, I would not want to be chatting with a white person. If he just wants to share for whatever reason he feels like he needs to say whatever to me, fine. If I need to ask any questions, fine. Other than that, I would not have a whole lot to say to this guy, particularly if you're still, because it sounded like you were asking maybe for suggestions about how best to proceed with this racist woman. Should you say something to her because you didn't agree with her conduct and how all of this, evolved and what have you, particularly if you're still trying to figure it out yourself how you want to deal with this. I would not make it something where you're tipping your hand, as they say, and just kind of telling him what you think or how you feel about what she said. I would listen to what he had to say. If you need to ask a question, and then move forward. You can make an assessment of that like later, but I would be very leery. Whites, they talk. This could be her pal just trying to feel out and see what's going on, and then as soon as that conversation is over, he runs back and tells her, everything that's going on. And I'm not just saying that, out of just ignorant or unfounded suspicion. I've seen that as a pattern that whites do this sort of thing, that you think this white person is cool. You're not cooler than they are with team racism. They're going to go back and function to make sure that they maintain white supremacy. So we need to keep that in the forefront of our mind. In terms of did I mishear? You were asking, how to proceed. Do you address it?
No, no, I appreciate that. That's I'll definitely take that in consideration. Yeah, I was just trying to figure out how to move forward. I know how to move forward. I just pretty much know how I need to move forward with her, and that's just to limit contact and to limit conversation and to not discuss politics in the office, and particularly, and just to keep it moving in this environment that we're in. And we're also competing for coins, which is what I like to say. And when you're competing for coins, people get very tacky. And right now, if it's a competition, I'm probably making a few more coins than we are, and we're in the same office competing for the same business. And I know I'll be quiet, but we had a lunch today, and we had to basically divvy up agents that we market to. And every time he mentioned, we were going through all these names, and every time he mentioned a name, I said, that person and I are doing business. And I could see her face like, how is this Negro doing this? And that's where a lot of the tension is coming from. So I'm just trying to navigate as best as possible, continue to make my money, but I want to be more serious in my environment because I realize a large portion of the issue is my behavior. So.
Right on. I think with the seriousness, I think a lot of that is just about black really having a code about what you're going to do. Because I think for a lot of us, that I don't know how you want to describe it, but that nervous laughter or that laughter when you're not quite sure about what to say or how you want to proceed. You don't want to get in trouble. It can be a fearful, terrifying situation because that's what white supremacy is, terrorism. I think that's where it comes from. I think you can be more serious, still productive, but I think you could be more serious where you don't have those laughter. Everything is not a resort to humor. When you already have an idea about, this is what I want to say, this is what I want to do. I've also encouraged people just be thinking on a daily basis so we can get out of that mode of being surprised about things where, yep, these racists, and particularly for you, since it seems like you're doing well, you might even be doing better than some of these tacky racists, and they're really upset about that. This nigger is here outperforming us. Like, oh God, we got to get him out of here and embarrass him along the way. Just having that in mind, I've even, encouraged people to take 10, 15 minutes before you go into your office space, your work area, to just prepare for battle. Like, I'm going to be around terrorists all day long, and already having in mind whatever tacky comment that they make or whatever they say. If they say nigger, whatever it is, I already know this is my code. Whether my code is I write things down or I got my technology, so I just make an MP3 recording really quick or whatever it is. When you start to have more of a code and just being, hey, I'm working with these racists, so I'm already going to have what to do, what my plan is about dealing with that. I think that helps a lot to minimize that tendency where you just have that laughter when you're kind of caught off guard or surprised in the moment how to respond. I think it greatly minimizes that and just giving you more confidence, more black self-respect about dealing with things in the workplace. I think it's just a matter of practice and time, at least in my experience. Did anybody else want to speak to that in terms of proceed? What it seemed like you were kind of getting an idea about what you wanted to do with the white woman. Anyone else want to speak to the serious aspect? Because I think other people have talked about that, or anything else we heard from the male caller that just dialed in.
I think wherever you go, there you are, and there's going to be some degree. I think that whatever vibe that you're giving off that you're receiving not seriousness has been established in that environment, so you're going to have to cope with that. Just understand that you're dealing with white supremacists or suspected white supremacists, and keep in mind what Neely Fuller says, never ask for an apology, respect, or love. So when you're addressing all of these grievances that you have with a suspected racist to another suspected racist, I think that you're just going to set yourself up for more problems down the line. So I think you should do your best to neutralize this situation, codify your behavior, and understand that the more they think about you off the clock, the more trouble you are likely to bring to yourself on the clock.
Are there other folks who had commentary they wanted to share on what we just heard from our male caller?
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
I would, two things. One, I don't think that you should address it with her. I don't see that that's constructive at all. I think that could cause more problems. Second, I think since this woman and you have a pattern or a history, I think perhaps documenting what is said and when, like Gus recommends often to take notes, have like a little workplace journal. I think that would be constructive. I also think for this white male who wants to ask you a bunch of questions tomorrow and get you to get emotional, don't. I don't think that you should trust this white male at all. I think that if you don't have a voice recorder, I think you should use your phone if your phone has an app for that. And before you even walk in his office, if he has one or whatever, just start your recorder, and you could just sit it face down so he can't see, but just even if he's not going to say anything incriminating, just so you can listen to it later to observe his manipulation and his tactics, and also to keep yourself on guard because you'll know you're recording, so you'll be, you know you're going into battle. It's everyday war, but you're going into battle. And I think that just no more talking to this white female at all. Like, just leave her alone. She's terroristic, and you know how everyone feels about white females. They can do no wrong, even when they're blatantly wrong. So I think she smells like disaster. And I would try to not be in her car. If y'all do lunch or anything like that, just drive your own car. Even if it means, people are like, well, why? I just want to be in my own car for a second. Like, come up with some kind of codified response. I don't think being in white female cars, if it is her car. If not, then excuse me. But, yeah, stay away from her. Thank you.
Any other feedback specifically for this situation?
Yes, I kind of want to say something, but I don't want to make a mistake and give a victim of racist white supremacy information that's not good. From what I have been listening to since the beginning of workplace racism programs, one thing the retired firefighter has thought of, that there's a lot of people a lot more nicer than I am on these jobs. I was similar to, I had rules similar to rules/codes similar to a previous caller that mentioned that especially to white people, if they don't speak to me, I don't speak to them as far as greetings is concerned, like morning, and even in the morning, I wouldn't say good morning, I'd just say morning after they said good morning. and didn't care if they got the message or not on what I was speaking about when I just said morning instead of good morning. But primarily, what that did, they left me alone. They left me alone, which was all right with me. I wouldn't necessarily say that I was being rude, attempting to be rude, because in my nature itself, is kind of shy. The things I'm most talkative about, I can tell you, is attempted the attempted science of counter racism and football, primarily. Yes, I would stay away from that white female, like staying away from a nuclear bomb. Get in a car with a white female? No. And if the subject comes up, I would tell her directly. As you said, I think I heard the caller said that he, and I could be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong now, that he needs to be more serious. Well, if that's so, then that's part of one of the points right there. Let that person know. From the there's already some sort of friction, if I guess the word I'm thinking about right now. So it's not like it's a secret about it, and white people are pretty up on that, because they cause a world of strife with people that they call non-white, consider to be non-white. Yeah, all the suggestions that I heard makes a lot of sense as far as they're concerned. Just keep pushing, keep it moving and forward. As far as they're concerned, and always be alert of who's around you and what they're saying and what they're doing. As far as they're concerned, be aware of what they're doing, and be very careful of what you are doing. Also, and eventually the tide would turn, because now they would see this new or awakening that you are demonstrating. Because white people, I've found out that white people are very keen on paying attention to their non-white victims. They do pay attention to us. I mean, I can tell you that emphatically, 100%. I got stories on that. Before I got on that job, I was a very young person, and I didn't understand that, but I certainly understood that over those 28 years, that they do pay attention to their niggers. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Any other suggestions for this situation specifically, or folks have their own situation you would like to address? Any folks we haven't heard from at all? Seem like they're... Oh, yes, sir, we can hear you. You're a little low. If you could speak up, please.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. Greetings to Gus, the host, the listeners and callers. To make a short point about the seriousness, like I have had encounters with that. Like, I think it's just the perception of being a black male. Like, if you try to, I try to be, I guess you can say, just courteous, not really being excessively courteous, but just on a basic, regular level. And I noticed people pretty much receive that well for the most part, but there's just days in this system where you just don't even feel like coming into work or whatever. And I guess what they call a so-called off day. And I think it communicates effectively, where, they won't even really say too much to me if I'm not really in the mood to have any kind of chit-chat. Because if I do talk, I talk in the form of trying to get information constructive information, not really revealing much about myself, and really trying to extract something from one of them, or whomever I might be talking to. But like, and then another thing is like, having the kind of voice that I have, like a lot of bass or whatever. Like, I noticed that, like, there'll be times where I think some people will try to mimic that, like the white females will try to will try to lower their voice, I guess, in the means of maybe trying to, I guess, mock it, something like that, or trying to, be masculine or whatever. But it's that sense of them over exaggerating things about black males. Just in your demeanor, you can just say greetings or, morning, good morning, or how's everybody doing or something like that. You don't really have to speak in detail too much. But the moment where you might not say anything, that can be interpreted as something that's over exaggerated, like, oh, well, he's thinking about doing harm to one of us maybe. He could be the next, to use a metaphor, Chris Dorner or something. But I think I keep thinking of the term like over exaggerate whenever a black male does something, as opposed to if there's a white man that comes in there and is very unpleasant or whatever, discourteous. But if I do it in the slightest, it's over exaggerated to emphasize that word again. But I wanted to also make a comment on the beginning segment about the artists that worked at Disney. Like, I can kind of relate to that myself because, like, I do little sketches and I've been designing characters for a long time, and I noticed that, like, I was responding to racism myself because I would always use the brown, like, and darker colors to make my own characters because I wasn't seeing black people, non-white people. So just make a brief point on that. And about some workplace racism, like my mom was telling me about, she went over to make a visit to my old supervisor. He had retired, and like what I had said recently, and he shared very interesting information that, like you said, your son, he's full of questions, and he is very smart and intelligent, and he even outdid me sometimes, or he I don't know if he said outsmarted, but he left me speechless sometimes. And then he said sometimes I answered them and sometimes I didn't. So I thought that was a very interesting last observation before he left. And there was a new clerk that started, and he sent out this email because it was about 5 of us in our department where we were trying to I think put in the last little request to get our, I guess you can call it promotions or whatever. And I believe it's 3 of us are non-white and 2 of us, well, within the group were white females. And I guess it didn't end up happening because I guess the new clerk is supposed to be doing training on other things. So he sent out this email anyway, using the language about changing the job titles, like whatever they're going to be called, because it used to be called staff assistant, like ever since I started there. And he said it's going to be called things like civil and record specialist. And it didn't indicate where there'd be some kind of tier ranking or level. And it would be like a 1, 2, 3, and a senior staff assistant. So I guess that was some kind of a codified way of saying that, it won't be any new promotions anytime soon. So, I was asking a white person, like is it, like, would our checklist have to be revised because it says staff assistant 3 and 4 on them? Does that mean since the job titles changed that these would change too? And I noticed her responses got smaller and smaller to the point where she was looking down at her phone. So I guess she became disinterested. And this was a person who also was trying to get a promotion too. But see, she is the same classification of the people that control everything. So I think she was using strict codification. And I've seen her do this as well, where the other two black females will mention something race-related or whatever. And like I noticed, she'll stop talking. You know, she'll just sit and listen. So, you know, just what people have said previously about them being analytical about what black people are discussing. You know, I peeped that. I looked to the side. You know, she was very quiet and just, you know, doing her work. So that was very interesting. And that's all I can pretty much think of right now. And I'll give it to the next person. Thank you.
Very interesting. I've said that before. White people, they tend to notice. And you said the guy before he retired, I was like, wow, your son asks these questions, and he even outsmarted me a few times. That it really sticks out. If you have a non-white person, they're trying to be constructive and codified in how they function, just asking questions, not just talking and laughing, trying to be serious. Really sticks out. White's like, uh-oh, this is one we better keep an eye on. Could be trouble. That's what you should have in the forefront. And again, just asking questions. Again, in my view, when you have whites, even white people noticing this nigger asks a lot of questions, that is a big component to us solving this problem. Asking more questions. I thought a lot of people could relate to that in terms of just not getting opportunities or advantages to utilize all of our talents, different ways that we respond to racism, white supremacy. Other folks, if you have commentary you would like to share, feel free to chime in. Anything stood out? I think that happens on the job as well. Just the last anecdote, our different caller in Florida shared about them changing the job titles and all that, and then when trying to get clarification, just so you understand, you know, what's happening with these potential opportunities to get, you know, move up the chain, as they say. And then she just gets totally disinterested. Now she's looking at her phone like standard racist code, and that's one of the ways, in my view, that they keep withhold constructive information. Where whites, I contend a lot of these decisions about how they're going to do these type of things, who's going to get promoted, we're changing the job titles or the qualifications or whatever it is, we're changing the salary around. Whites have a lot of these conversations amongst themselves behind closed doors about how they're going to orchestrate all this, and then they come back out around everybody else and are, oh man, I'm so confused, I can't believe this happened, and act like they don't know what's going on, and nothing could be further from the truth. That, in my view, I could be in error, but I contend that sort of thing is happening all the time, macro and micro level. That tends to be the way that whites do business. And again, just so that we are the ones, non-white people, the victims, sitting around clueless and trying to figure out what happened, what does this mean, do I have to start the process all over again? And at the end of the day, guess what white people say? Anyone we have not heard from at all, you should dial in now. We have a little over an hour, so there's no excuse. Should not have spectators. Dial in if you want to comment on anything that we've shared thus far, or if you have your own situation, feel free. I think everyone who dialed in has a hand up. I just wanted to share we had a person who wrote in really quick. This is a 25-year-old black female who works at a call center full time. My coworkers are very toxic. I hear them gossiping all the time. I believe they don't like me because I won't gossip or joke with them. I talk to them strictly about the job. I also hear them snickering around my desk sometimes, and I get the feeling they are laughing at me. I get nasty looks from them sometimes too. I listened to one of the programs on workplace racism, and you read an email about a guy not being invited to lunch or happy hour, and I can relate to that as well. They never invite me to lunch or happy hour. I don't care though, because they are not people who I want to associate with at all. My white female manager shows favoritism to certain coworkers. She promoted a few of my coworkers to another position that pays more. I noticed the coworkers she chose to promote were white and quote-unquote Latino. Can you give me some advice on this matter? I really want to quit. I'm just afraid that I may run into the same situation at another job. It most certainly will be the same situation, or it could even be something worse than what it already is. I'm not sure which situation, if it's the gossip part or the promotion part. The gossip part, I would just ignore it. I mean, it might change slightly if these are other victims. I guess it would, yeah. I'm just thinking for myself. I don't know how other people, but for me, it would be a significant shift if these are other black people that are doing this, other non-white people, or is this a group of racists that are sitting around and doing this? If it's some black people, I might just be on ignore, whatever. That didn't come through in the letter. If you want to add that or call in and clarify. If these are other black people or predominantly other black people, I would probably just ignore that sort of thing. That, unfortunately, and again, racists are to blame for this, but that anti-blackness, a lot of people have commented about that. Even Pam, we've talked about this on the program before, Mr. Fuller as well, in terms of victims of racism, us getting on the job and it just being a lot of gossiping and talking about other people. And I think Mr. Fuller, even his term, the elevator insults, that sort of thing, that is very, very common, has been for a long time. If it's victims, I would just ignore, stay focused on my work. I think Mr. Fuller has said that sort of behavior tends to produce its own set of problems that's going to be a distraction for people in that group if that continues. And I have seen that myself, where that can end up taking care of itself once, a few too many conflicts or nonsense comes up, or people wasting time and not being on task, where whites might intervene and stop some of that. So I would just ignore that. If it's whites doing this, that might be something that I would document. If this is happening on a regular basis, if it's directed towards you and that sort of thing, then that might be something that you want to approach just from a professionalism standpoint. Like, is this professional appropriate behavior for the office? And it doesn't even have to be calling out anyone per se, just what sort of environment do we want to promote? Do we want an environment where in the call center we're just sitting around and talking about folks all day long, and we get to the phone when we get there and we're not really focused on what we're here to do? Is that what we want to promote in the workplace if it's white people? And again, some people might just say ignore all of that all the way through. That's fine as well. That's a suggestion that I have given out before, though, just approaching it from a what is best for business sense. This is not a moral thing, taking it out of that, thinking about this as some sort of grade school thing, because I think that's the way a lot of times that they want us to portray these events, that this is just, I'm a little child and my feelings are hurt and the cool kids don't like. No, that's not what this is at all. I don't care about any of that, but just is this professional? Is this the way that we want to conduct things in the work environment? Would it be better just to make sure we're all being courteous and focused on what we're here to do, what we're paid to do? If it's the promotion aspect, if that was what you were asking for suggestions on, I would go through the policy and procedure and see if they have criteria, because sometimes they do, about the promotion process and how that's evaluated. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's just a thing where they say it's discretion. We promote who we want, and that's that. That's going to be obviously much more difficult to deal with. If it's not in policy and procedure, you can go and ask them, can you explain the system in terms of how people are evaluated and promoted here? You can review your own workplace performance to see where your performance is ranking. If you're getting high marks, if you're getting evaluations that are great and showing that you're doing sterling work, oh, okay, well then, hey, I should be in line for a promotion too if my evaluations are so glowing. That's the route I would take that. But the promotion aspect, I could see that being more difficult, because a lot of times whites just say it's discretion. We're in charge and we decide who gets promoted, and that's that. If you don't like it, feel free to submit your 2-week notice or whatever you're going to do. Did folks have any suggestions on what the caller wrote in, the situation, the gossip and or promotion aspect?
Yeah, the
Let's see. I heard 2 different folks. I guess we already heard from retired firefighter. Have we heard the other person that spoke up? Have we already heard from you?
Yes, sir. You've heard from me.
Okay. I guess we'll get you first, and then we'll get retired firefighter.
Okay, thank you. As for the job aspect and the gossip, my code for work is I got to work for a paycheck. I don't go to make friends, whether white or non-white. And I particularly, I care to be alone. If not alone, if I have to be with someone, one person, group settings seem not to work because of the egos or the bonds that have already been made prior to you meeting everyone. So I just try to keep my circle to a minimum where the conflict is minimized, and it's a situation where I can leave when I'm ready to, without having to get an agreement from any other members of the group to leave. But I'm putting myself in a position where I can make my own decisions. So, go to work for your paycheck and not to make friends, and that would solve a lot of problems, in my opinion. As for the promotion part, sometimes promotion is not the best thing, especially if she's in a position now that she's already feeling uncomfortable. A promotion will only give you more. It will only put you in a place where you have more responsibility, and with more responsibility, you have more eyes on you. The more eyes on you, more than likely be more white eyes, which are already uncomfortable with the people anyway. So I would decline the promotion just for job security, and try to start my code from there, because obviously there's a pattern that they've seen prior to this incident, and they respond to her a different way than they would if she already had a code prior to getting there. So that's my suggestion. I'll leave my line.
Retired firefighter?
Yes, I with the promotion thing, I have similar thoughts about promotions. Depends on. I mean, there's a compensatory situation with promotions. You know, yes, you get more money, but there's a different level of responsibility that may not be to your best interest. You really got to think that out in a world that's dominated by the global system of racist white supremacy. A non-white black person, in my opinion, that's in a quote-unquote position of authority, white people have not done you any favors, and money is not everything, as far as I'm concerned. So you really got to think that out. Now, based on whatever your position is, if when your pay scale, this is what is important, I think. Your pay scale, when it's time to get promoted, along with everybody else, yes, you should be concerned about that as far as getting your additional salary, as far as that's concerned. Gossip. In my opinion, on a job, it's like a science lab, so to speak, of the world, and the conditions that non-white people are in, and associated in a much more closer situation with white people. You're going to have problems out of non-white people. You should expect it. When you get up in the morning, you're going to have that, as far as that's concerned, and develop a code of what you're going to be saying and what you're going to be doing, what you're not going to be saying, what you're not going to be doing while you're in non-white black people's company, with the idea in mind of solving problems but not causing any more problems for yourself or someone else, as far as that's concerned. Another non-white person specifically. And just keep your eye on those white people. Keep your eye on those white people on a daily basis, because more than likely, they are ultimately the people that can harm you. Not saying exclusively now. Non-white people can harm you also, but on the job, it'd be primarily under the guidance of a white person, allowing them to do that. So those are basically just some of my thoughts as far as they're concerned. The whole idea with the not being invited to the party, that it kind of like baffles me. I mean, I just didn't have involved in any type of employment like that. Although it's not totally foreign to me. I've heard about it before, but that's just baffling to me. as far as not being invited somewhere, as far as that's concerned. But that's the only thing I have to say on that. Thank you.
For sure. Anyone we haven't heard from at all? Anyone who has a hand up that we haven't heard from?
I've spoken, but can I comment on the last person who wrote in?
Yes, ma'am.
I have to agree, and only because so adamantly I have to agree with the previous two callers who spoke about the promotion. I'm in a situation like this is 1842 or Emma, who I'm, whatever. And it didn't turn out right either time. And, I understand you're 25, ambitious, you want to make more money, who knows what else you have going on. I totally understand that. But it is also how you work it. So I don't want to say, don't be ambitious and don't go for whatever it is that you want, But I do think that you would really want to weigh out the pros and the cons of what you're doing, because you may get that pay increase. And yes, you'll have the responsibility, but I'm sure, sometimes some people thrive with a little bit more responsibility. But what else is going to come is being the front face for whatever could go wrong, a whole different element of stress between coworkers and who now will become your underlings. So you're going to catch it, from the white people and the non-white people. And also just there's just so many elements to it. I've had two specific situations, one that I'm currently in now, that the promotion was a bad thing. And looking back on it, if I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have taken the promotion. Leave me where I'm at as the part-time or the full-time hourly, bump the salary and all that, just because the amount of stress that comes with it, and it's slightly inexplicable because each situation is different. So, but both times I look back and I'm just I was better off where I was. And I just wanted to chime in and say that, just not to discourage you. If that's what you want, if you like the company you're with that mission, that's something that you want, I would definitely just give it some thought. I don't know how long you've been working there, but I'd also even work there for a little bit longer, at least a year and a half before really, jumping into anything, just so you really understand. And in the meantime, just really be studying the people who would be above you and the people that you would be unilateral with. Just give it a lot of thought. Not to discourage you, because I think shoot for the moon. At the same time, know that there's a caveat to that, and sometimes it is better to just be cool where you are. I also would catch things from other non-white people, Slack or whatever. I've never been a part of the cool crew, whatever. I consider it a favor. It allows you to stay focused. In any downtime that you have, you can be listening to one of the archives or plotting your next move or studying something or just being constructive, which you already know because you've made the choice not to, and there's nothing that you can really do about that. People are gonna talk about you, just because, especially since listening to the cows, they may not be listening to the cows, so you're just going to be different, just the way you carry yourself and the way that you maneuver. But you got it. Thank you.
Right on. Folks, that if we have not heard from you at all, and you do have commentary you want to share, you should go ahead and get your hand up. Do not wait till the last minute. If other folks have commentary they would like to share, if you have figured out some things that work well, that's always welcome. If we have any entrepreneurs, certainly dial in, share how being quote-unquote self-employed has altered the way you deal with racists on the job. If you checked your policy and procedure, always want to hear that as well. The number again, 641-715-3640. The code is 564943#. Press *6 if you would like to participate. Just checking again. Anyone we haven't heard from who has a hand up? I will assume we got them all. Hopefully folks are not just hanging out. Other folks have commentary they want to share about any of what we've heard thus far or their own situation they would like to address. Feel free. folks are getting themselves together, I will reckon, or maybe everyone is having a grand work experience. I did think some people, it might be that we have some folks who have not really been on the job as much over the last 2 weeks with all of the Horror Day stuff finally wrapping up. I even suspect that a good number of people had Monday off this week, so I suspect we probably have some people who've only worked maybe 3 days or so, maybe 5 days over the last week and a half, 10 days. So I thought some people might not have as much to share, but I think people should still have enough from everything that happened before we got to the holidays with regards to workplace racism that there should never be a dry moment on that conversation. Some of the folks who dialed in with a hand up more recently, did you all have commentary you wanted to share?
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
2812. I will mention something that happened before the holidays. A realtor had referred a client to me. I believe it was a younger white female, age of maybe 22, 23, and she needed some advice on cleaning up her credit, but really she didn't have any credit. And so, I had a conversation with her about a couple of days, what to do. Here's how you do it. You'll be ready to buy a house in like the next 2 or 3 weeks. And she was like, "Are you serious? I said, "Ma'am, if you just listen to what I'm saying to do," I said, "we'll get you ready and then we'll be able to move forward and help you buy a house." So like clockwork, she does everything that I asked her to do. Agent and I are following up saying, "Hey, did you talk to the client or whatever?" I said, "Yes." I said, "She'll call me back in 3 weeks." The young white lady calls me back 3 weeks and says, "Hey, can you pull my credit? I did everything you asked me to do." Well, she had a 0 credit score, and then all of a sudden she had a 720. Keep that in mind. So a week later, maybe I get a text from the agent saying, "Hey, I'm talking to the client, and she called her credit union, and she's shopping interest rates or something like that." And I said, "What is she shopping interest rates for?" I said, without my advice, she couldn't even got a loan. She didn't have a loan. And so the agent said, "Well, I want you to call her, and I'm going to put her on 3-way so you can try to talk to the client." So I'm just kind of going through my job synopsis. And so I sat down with her, and I'm very polite and courteous, and I'm like, "Hey, and on one hand, I'm like, why do I even need to talk to you? Because you weren't in a position to purchase or buy or do anything without talking to me in the first place. And in our business, I've never really ever had that happen, to where a client comes to you for advice, it works, and then they use somebody else." So the agent is literally on the phone, and now the agent is not white. The agent is a non-white female. And she's like, "Well, hey, Aaron helped you out, and da-da-da-da." But the agent never wanted to say courtesy, or, you should have, I didn't expect her to say respect. But she said, "It's just out of common courtesy that the person that helped you do this, you should move forward." And I said my piece, and I said, "I'd like to earn your business, but if not, I understand you have to do what's best for you." And I just left it at that. I was a little upset, but at the same time, it was tacky, and I figured that's what whites do. So fast forward, a week later, it's like maybe 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm reading something, and the agent sends me an email. And she says, "Hey, I want you to read something, by the way." And come to find out that not only did this young white girl, 23 years old, not use me, but she also fired the realtor. And the realtor said, "Can you believe that?" And I said, "No." I said, "Yes." I said, "I just find it very interesting." That's all I said. I said, "Yes, it's very interesting." But in the email, the young lady said, "Hey, I have to do what's best for my family, and I just don't think you and your lender are a good fit for us." And that's all I wanted to share.
Doesn't get any better than tacky. 23 as well. I think that's important because that's the group that people, the millennials. She was raised with a black president for, almost a half of her life. And she probably listens to Beyonce and Rihanna and Jay-Z and Solange. She probably likes all these guys. It's great. What are you talking about? Right? This is the new Don't you believe it, or believe it at your own peril. I'll put it that way. Other folks have commentary that they wanted to share?
Yes, may I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yes, there was a interesting incident that occurred. I almost left out of my notes. I was looking down, I wanted to share. This just has to deal with the dangerous nature of white people. Again, mistaking them for your friends. I think there was a previous caller who said that he feels that he's being showcased, sometimes smiling and being very polite with them. And I believe another caller said something about his voice. And I think Neely Fuller has spoken about this, the black man's voice. We don't mean it, but when we're speaking straight and directly to people, white people automatically take a defensive posture and get scared. I was called out to do a repair at a home in a majority white neighborhood. In fact, it was literally one of those white picket fence planned communities about 20 miles outside of the city. So, I'm on high alert. I'm watching my back. So I get to the house and the homeowner's not there. So I'm doing work on a home and no one is there watching over me. So automatically you got this Negro. You're like, what is this Negro doing with a ladder on the side of the house? So I'm on alert, and all of a sudden I see a overweight white male start approaching me from across the street. And, I immediately stop. I take a very neutral position. I square up to him and I say, hey, you must be Mr. So-and-so, because I spoke with a presumably white female. He says, no, I'm the neighbor from across the street. He says, did your boss come by the other day? He said, I responded, no, my boss, I'm the owner of my company. He said, oh, okay, because I just saw a guy here the other day. In fact, there were some Mexican guys here the other day across the street, and I had to call the police on them. I said, well, no, I'm not related. I'm not affiliated with that group. He began talking with me, quote unquote, just kind of friendly, and telling me how, I enjoy your work. Can you give me a quote on my house? And I want to come over, and I want you to come over and, do some work on my house. I believe in my mind that gentleman was armed. I didn't see anything on his body, but I believe that man was coming over. I forgot the name of the incident that occurred in Texas where the robbers were leaving their neighbor's house. And I believe there was an old white man. He shot two non-white males who were fleeing from robbing the home and killed them when they told them not to. I believe this gentleman was armed. And that encounter, to me, just proves how dangerous white people are. Now, to compound that issue and the complexity of that issue, well, I finally get to meet the homeowner. We had spoken over the phone. I assumed she was a white female. She was a white female. With a name like Tammy, probably a white female. She gets to the house, and I meet her. She, of course, hops out of the truck. I didn't see who was sitting on the other side of the truck because there was a male driving. All of a sudden, I see when I'm talking to her, the male get out of the truck. He is a non-white. Presumably, he looked black to me. Might have been, quote unquote Hispanic, whatever, from a non-white from the Caribbean area. But he gets out the car, walks over. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe he works for her. Maybe she's helping him out. He's got a trailer. She says, no, something over here, honey. I immediately realized this must be her significant other. And he's a young guy. She's maybe in her late 40s, very non-attractive white female. And this victim here, horrible situation, tragic arrangement, is in a relationship with her. Apparently they're married, and they're about to get married, their fiance, and he's helping her out. I, of course, don't want to come off because I'm kind of standoffish with white women sometimes, and I didn't want to appear like my demeanor had changed whenever I saw him. But I was really nice with him. I think, it's no fault of his. He's just another victim. She then proceeded to half the payment that she was supposed to pay me. She was supposed to pay me everything up front for the project. She proceeded to pay me half of what she owed me up front. Now, I'm pretty stern. The weather was not very conducive to the work, so I wasn't able to accomplish a lot. But I believe she was practicing racism by purposefully withholding money after we had agreed that she would pay me a set amount on this particular job up front. Again, I can't help but realize, I think I was listening to the Wheat Money Cows program, it was in my earphone while I was talking to her, and I just couldn't help but realize that, realize that this woman, although she is, lying down with a non-white male, is consistently practicing racism on a daily basis, with him and, without him there. I just wanted to give that experience. I'll take my call offline. Thank you.
These white women, lots of stories with white women today, terrorizing folks on the job. And this one, of course, it can't be racism. If, her spouse, I mean, certainly it is not racism. It's standard procedure. I think that's one of those as well, in terms of having that serious demeanor when you engage with them. And I mean, it takes, that's why I recommend as well, just taking some practice when if you're at home in front of a mirror, if you're married or if you have a partner or whatever it is, and you have other people that you live with, you can have them practice so that you can just get accustomed to how you want to say things, so that you won't even have to think about it. This is the tone that I use consistently. These are the words that I'm going to use to articulate my views and what have you. Just if you can get where you have that already established so that you can do it comfortably and you don't have to spend a whole lot of time thinking about it, I think that can be a big help. But I know for a lot of us, myself included, when you make that effort to just be serious, you're not yelling, you're not cursing, you're not fuming anything and wagging your finger in somebody's face, just talking serious, the way we're talking right now, being serious, and it becomes, oh my gosh, he was angry and furious and I was just intimidated and so that sort of thing. So that's why I say it's important to be serious, but just watching your tone, the way that you present, because they will make that sort of counter argument like you were talking about in this situation. The white woman reneges, she lies, she's agreed that she's going to pay you this amount, and then she's not going to do that, comes up with whatever excuse she has, and then you're just, this is a business, this is what we agreed, blah, blah, blah. And then it becomes, oh man, he was so hostile and nasty over the money, and I was just afraid to even deal with him. White women are amazing, and I would even say white men, but white women, I think in particular, are notorious for that sort of trick, racist stunt. Do we have other folks who are going to comment? Other people that we have not, anyone we haven't heard from who had commentary they wanted to share?
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Good evening to Gus, the host, the callers, and the listeners. I live in the Northern Virginia area, but I'm originally from the Deep South. And I wanted to share what I think is some of the best advice I ever got for dealing with anything in the workplace. That advice came in the form of a simple comment, an answer to a question from an older gentleman. That advice was, never self-actualize on the job. For me, what that means is, never get so wrapped up into a job that you pour yourself into it and forget that you don't own the job, someone else does. And if you get too wrapped up in a job or a position, whatever we want to call it, then you're setting yourself up, we're setting ourselves up for greater mistreatment and greater ability for them to do psychological damage for us. And I think over the years, when I first heard it, and then the subsequent years, that has helped me so much. That is, to never self-actualize on the job. We don't own it, they own it. They can do whatever they want to with it. And if we don't identify the fact that we're not it, we're not the job, and the job is not us, then whenever the psychological terror comes, then we feel it greater, and we pass that terror a little bit on to our families. We pass it on to our loved ones, and it deals such of a blow to our physical nature that we're really not the person that we need to be, because we have poured ourselves so much into the job and allowed them to hurt us to such a degree. And as black people, we, I think, automatically do such a thing where we pour ourselves into a job and we try so hard, we put our head down and we push so hard that we don't see what's really happening. So I just want to share that. Never self-actualize on the job. A job is a place where you just go to get your nickels, so you can pay for your food and pay for your place to stay. And you do the best you can, but you never self-actualize on the job. You go to work on time, you be on time, you be early. You do what you're supposed to do, but remember, it's not your job. Now, consequently, if you consider not self-actualizing on the job, and I keep repeating that, but consequently, if you don't do that, then the best thing for you to do to find where you can self-actualize at is somewhere outside of the job that brings you greater joy, because the job is not supposed to do that. Something outside that actually makes you happy, that makes your heart beat fast. And a lot of times, we just don't have hobbies. We don't take the time for ourselves to find out what our hobbies could be, or we don't take the time for ourselves to find out what will actually be the thing that makes you want to pour yourself into it. That's not a job. That's all. I'm in my line, but never self-actualize on the job.
Appreciate that. Definitely, I think I've said before, it's important just keeping that in mind, that we're still on the plantation when you go on those jobs. I've said that before in terms of not using those possessive adjectives. My desk, it's not your desk. It's not even your job. They can, toss you out and get somebody to replace you in the next 5 minutes if they want to. Very important just to keep that perspective. I think that keeps you exactly what the previous caller was talking about. It just keeps you in that perspective from losing sight and thinking things are something other than what they are. This is not your company. It's not your desk. It's not your chair. It's not your computer. I think we had someone who got in trouble before. They were using a company cell phone like it was theirs, making text messages and what have you. And that is super important to keep that in mind at all times. Other folks who have comments they wanted to share, questions, observations?
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Gus. Good evening to the listeners. I appreciate the COWS program. I appreciate all the contribution and all the constructive points made from it. But I just have a quick question for you, Gus, and or the callers about how to proceed with some codification. I recently have just been promoted at my plantation, and sometimes my professional cohorts like to do some celebrating in the professional setting and outside of the professional setting. And to my knowledge as of right now, I do not know if any of those celebratory events are going to be taking place for me. But how should I engage with my codification if some of my professional cohorts want to celebrate me departing and leaving to another position? I'll mute my line.
Other people have brought that up. I think Emmy was just talking about that earlier in terms of transitioning from a job and being professional about it and what your code looks like when you are going to transition to a better, hopefully, place of employment. If it's a party, like, they just want to have a cake or go to a bar or whatever it is, bring in food or something, just, hurrah, and it was great working with you and all that sort of thing. I don't think you have to participate. I've seen where people have said, that's just not even Mr. Fuller. I heard him say that. He worked, I think, for the Bureau of Engraving and Printing in Washington, D.C. It's a federal job, Department of Treasury. I think he said he worked there for, over 3 decades. And they, had a big party for him. And he said the same thing. That's just not my style. I wouldn't care if I worked here for 70 years. That's just not me. I don't want a party. Let's just go ahead and do our work and, go about our day. I think he said he went and they had the cake and everything, and he left so quick they didn't even know where he was. You can verify and check him. But I've heard other people who said the same thing, that they just, it's not like they can make you come and, sit and eat cake or whatever they're trying to do. So you can be courteous. I appreciate the sentiment, but that's just, I don't need any attention. Let's just go about our day. And if anybody wants to say, goodbye, wish me well, that's great. But yeah, we don't need a whole cake and party and all that stuff. And I'm not even comfortable doing all that. That's just not, the way I roll. You can just give it that way or however you want to word it. And I don't think it's anything that they can do.
Thank you.
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know specifically. I would agree with Gus with finding a savvy way to finagle out of that, come up with some kind of, it's just not my thing, or I appreciate the gesture, but no thank you. One of the things I'm doing is kind of just like not addressing it. A lot of people I'm like letting them know, hey, I'm leaving, just because I think it's polite to let people know. Just because when hey, I'm leaving, just so you know, so it's not like you come in and it's like, where's, and they're like, oh, we should have lunch, or let's go out and have drinks, and what I'm going to do is just not mention it. So I'm going to leave, and that's going to be the end of it. My last day is going to come, and then I'm gone, and I'm just coming up with excuses between now and then. Oh, I can't have lunch, I'm having lunch with so-and-so, and then the day will come where I won't be there. Oh, it's okay, don't worry about it. Again, thank you very much. Take care. Hope all is well. And that's it. For a big party, I'm not exactly sure. I would just let them know that makes you uncomfortable, or you just don't want to do it. That way, it's not constructive. You don't want to waste the money. Like, you can come up with all kinds of things. That's just not your thing. All right. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yep. That'd be hurt.
Yes, sir.
On the partying aspect of the job, I would suggest to limit your availability for the job if you're not being paid for that time, particularly with parties. I think it was set prior on the program to set a specific time, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, preferably at the beginning of the party or the event, just to show face and leave. If there's alcohol involved, I would not take a drink of anything. Those things can be held against you at a later time. Those things are given to you to see how you act once you're inebriated, see how your movements or how you are out of control. And if it's pressure, just say, no, I don't want to drink, and just take a stand. That tends to give you a sense of respect, especially when you're dealing with these racist white men and racist white people. Because in the industry I am, it's a alpha male dominated industry, so you must let them know who you are and what you stand for, what you're not going to stand for. So alcohol is a no-no, and limit your time. Don't let them put you in a situation where you're going to be there 3 hours at a party, because all they're doing is they're watching you and they're waiting on you to do something where they can just take it into a foul. I distrust everything they do. If they agree on doing something, it has to be something wrong with it. It's not for me. So that's the mindset I take, and I'll mute my line.
Thank you, sir.
Other comments? Folks want to respond to that situation, or if you have your own incident, we got about 20 minutes before we wrap up, unless folks are satisfied now. I think Emmy, formerly 1842, I think she had a previous work incident she might share with us before we wrap. But anyone else, comments they want to get in, questions, observation, and certainly if you have figured out something that works well on the job, always good to hear that also.
Can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
This is not the other one that you were referring to, but something that I have found that works well is it's when I listen to Dr. Welsing speak, and when I listen to Mr. Neely Fuller speak, and they provide us with constructive things to do that can elevate our level of Black self-respect and just improve our Black mental health. One of the things, too, is like, they don't speak about it this way, but when there is a shift in the way that you think about things, not just simply like acquiring information, but kind of appropriating that information and just changing the scene in your mind. How this relates to workplace racism is I've always wanted to talk about racism with folks, but now that I'm a little bit more clear, I have some codification, I got some function and definitions, some names, things have shifted, right? And I've been able to, especially since I'm being able to leave, share some information with some people. And the more that I do it, the higher the Black self-respect, the clearer my intention is, it's more effective. One of the female Blacks, there's two. There's a one that I spoke with who was like in school, and I dropped Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. She took it, ran with it. She was doing her thing. Another one is less inclined to really do research or read or really, she'll talk about things, but it's on a superficial level, which is in no way, shape, or form her fault necessarily. All victims, but I've been able to keep all of our conversations focused today. Make sure that I'm always bringing it back to these resources, like check this out, asking questions, give me your analysis and all that. She's been requesting some of that kind of conversation and stuff. It could be superficial, but who cares? One thing that I did today, which was really interesting, and it made me so happy, put us all on a group chat, and the other one who took with the research, she and I began conversing quite intensely about Dr. Welsing and even the ICE, and then I was like, we should all get the ISIS papers and read it. I mean, I have it, and the other one has it, but, I'm saying we should all get it so it doesn't feel like this other one feels like, oh, she's the only one who's not hip or whatever. And we should read it and discuss it. And so, because before when we were on this group chat, it was about us going out to happy hour and drinking. Stop. We're talking about racism, white supremacy. We're talking about codification, and we're sharing this, so we're staying connected in a way that I feel constructive. And so we looped her. Well, the conversation just began today. She hasn't really responded, but my hope is that when it's not just me or one other person, but it's like a fun thing, something that like we could be constructive. Because then the other one was like, well, yeah, we could read it, get together, and have drinks. Like in my mind, I'm thinking no to the drinks, but hey, if it gets us reading ISIS paper, talking about Dr. Frances Welsing, we'll see what happens. We finagle that. But it seemed very constructive, and she was in on the conversation. And so, a way to share and to hopefully bring people on board so that they can begin their own process of codification and getting more clear, especially because she has children and things like that. But that happened. I only know them because I work with them. That's it. Thanks.
Folks talked about...
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Gus. Go ahead. Finish your statement.
Just folks that talked about that before, if you are in position where you can leave a job, particularly you can do the professional leave, you didn't curse and, drive off and leave skid marks in the parking lot, where you have those 2 weeks or whatever, length of time between when you're going to transition. And if you work with other Black people, hey, I have a little bit more freedom now. I can try and share a little bit of information. They can do whatever they want with it. I won't be here to face the repercussions. And people saying that they got constructive results. That is grand, something to think about. If you feel like it would still be a risk, possibly that they could, maybe go tell some other racists and they could try and sabotage your career down the future. That is certainly something to consider. But have heard a number of people say that they have tried that out and it has worked well. So right on for trying to share constructive info with other victims of racism. Retired firefighter?
Yes, I'll just start off by saying with the celebration type of thing, that's totally out as far as that's concerned. I don't know if retirement is similar to promotion. I do know that it's not unusual to traditionally do something for that quote-unquote person who's retiring and or getting promoted. In my case, I actually accepted the meal situation because of a couple of the people that I actually trusted as far as the meal is concerned. Matter of fact, one of the guys is somebody that I can call him up within 5 minutes, after the program, as far as that concerned. We stay in contact with one another. But because I had contacted the chief and because I was told there was an opportunity that I have to stay the full 24 hours, meaning from 7 a.m. to 7 the next morning. So after that meal, after that deal that everybody prepared to, and you don't always get to do this, which is go and sleep for the night as a firefighter, because the emergency calls may take place any given point in time. But I guess by the time they went on a call about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I was already gone forever, as far as they're concerned. But anyway, it was something else I was going to say about it. Oh yeah, as far as on the job and relating to another non-white victim of racism about white supremacy. Actually, in my case, I was fortunate enough to have that with 3 other non-white black males. The first situation, it was 2 black males, and we actually met on a quote-unquote protest where the black firefighters were protesting the union itself, and picketing the union itself. And what kind of made a situation stick to whereas we still communicate with one another today. As a matter of fact, one of them I just got to talking to about maybe a couple of hours ago, and we actually met that day. It was somewhere back in 1984 or 1983, something like that. They were out there picketing, and then the white guys just came outside and said, "Hey, any one of you guys who want to come in and get some coffee and donuts, come on in." And everybody all of the black males went in to the union office, the very same people that they were picketing, except for us 3. and I'm telling you, we've been in contact with one another ever since then, literally. And I met Mr. Fuller over one of these guys' house, December 7th, 1990. We have personally met Dr. Francis Wilson, and on a not necessarily a routine basis, but on a basis every now and then when I had a question. One thing about we all know about Dr. Wilson, that you can call her up, and if she wouldn't answer that phone, she will call you back. She would call you back. So the relationships that that I was fortunate enough to have, sometimes it does happen, right there on the job. Those 3 people, and it's been very productive. We don't even go over each other's houses unless we have some sort of constructive agenda. As far as that's concerned, well planned out agenda. We don't even go to each other's homes or anything like that. We would, if we're calling each other on the phone, it is for something that I have already thought about, and I kind of maybe wanted this person to give their opinion on it, or vice versa, or something like that. Very codified. That I get a lot of practice with it. So, and this program certainly also helps it also. And it started in the workplace. Thank you.
Some folks have said they have had some success. It is not. It's not like it can't happen. I know some people have certainly had the experience as well, where it didn't work out that great. But hey, that is phenomenal. If it can be 2, 3, even 1 is great, but 2, 3 folks, we all have constructive exchange and can mention literature, people that have great ideas on racism. That is awesome, and can be really effective in helping you kind of minimize racism in the workplace, or just strategize about how you want to deal with things. If you have 1, 2 other people who are a little bit less confused, you all can have that dialogue. Man. Other folks, anything they want to make sure they get in before we get ready to close things out? About 8 minutes before we get ready to wrap things up. Hopefully we did not miss anyone who had a hand up. If they had something they wanted to share, I think everyone who dialed in at whatever point during the program who had a hand up, I think we got all the callers. Questions or observations, please do not wait till the last minute. You have something you want to make sure you get in. And again, to remind folks to make sure workplace, not workplace journal. Sorry, that was not what I wanted to make sure I got in. Remind folks, number one, we'll be here tomorrow for the book club. Gwen Eiffel, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We are almost done. I think tomorrow is second to last. We'll be done next week and moving on to a new book the day President-elect Trump is inaugurated. But that's down the road. Tomorrow, Gwen Eiffel, session 5, The Breakthrough, Politics and Race in the Age of Obama. And then Saturday, we'll be here for the compensatory call-in, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Tune in. We'll catch up, news, observations, past 7 days. Now, with workplace racism, just to remind folks to, again, check your policy and procedure. We haven't really heard anyone for a few weeks, it seems, who's talked about or shared anything from policy and procedure. Again, that's something I would encourage folks review and to not wait until you have a problem to look at your policy and procedure. That document can tell you a lot about your company. If it's sloppily put together, then I think Roz said that document and what it looks like, how it's treated, that lets you know everything you need to know about that company right there in terms of how they're going to treat you and how they do business. So look it over. That way you'll know what the policy is. I've said consistently that a lot of times one of the ways they practice racism is that they do not apply rules in the same manner to black people, where they will either not enforce policy and procedure with whites if they are violating the rules or not following what the policy is and what have you, whereas black people, it's exact opposite. We want to be...
And I threw the rest away. I'll buy it in the morning.
We want to be as punitive as possible when they go about enforcing rules, regulations on the job, any violation, and then to see if we can find anything else that we can add on as opposed to one violation. We can make it 10 violations of code. So be familiar with your policy and procedure, and you can also add that to your notes. If you're seeing where it hasn't been a problem with you, you're not in trouble, everything is going okay for you, at least at the moment. But you can look at that policy and procedure and see where there are violations or where they are not doing things equally with regards to employees. Those are things that can be included in your notes. So if something does come up down the road, you are the one. It's not a one-time thing, but it's a myriad of things that are not happening correctly that should be addressed on the job. So just check that policy and procedure out. And if any of the passages, a paragraph or a sentence stands out for whatever reason, make sure to share on the program. Just want to make sure folks are remembering to do that. Anything else people need to get in before we get ready to wrap up? Folks satisfied for the evening?
Is there still time for me to share the rewrite, the evaluation of the experience?
I believe so.
Okay. Then I will take some time and do that because I was flipping through it, and I'll give it to y'all the way that I wrote it. I won't edit it, just so, keep it honest, keep it 100. So I'm recounting a traumatic experience here so I can officially heal and let it go. Dan Barely, white, male, terrorist, psychopath, narcissist, race soldier. If I had known then what I know now, I would have seen this coming, but in my ignorance, I fell to folly. December 2012, I graduated May 2011, began working as a pharmacy tech, August 2011, for CVS getting paid $1 and some change per hour, less than a white girl with no education, no experience, me, a bachelor's degree, state and national certification, over 5 years of pharmacy tech experience. Anyway, so a friend from high school hit me to a community service board, which provides services for mental health. And I was elated because that's where I wanted to work. So I got the job, and I began working as a residential counselor around December 12th. Early 2013, the white man, and some of these dates, I haven't read over this, so I'm just going to give it to y'all. Anyway, by early 2013, the white male gay manager who hired me was moved and replaced by Dan Barely, the psychopath. He shortly fired, or she quit, the non-white black female residential counselor too. They had gotten into it, and she never returned and never spoke about it, at least with me. I was so hungry for money. I had student loans. For a title, I wanted to be important. For upward growth, I didn't want to just stay where I was. Looking back, I remember a young African woman telling me that to move slowly and not rush into something I might not have been ready for, and I didn't listen. I had thought maybe she was hating on me, jealous, trying to hold me back, or just didn't understand my situation and the need for the money. This is for the woman who was talking about the promotion, just a side note. Anyway, Dan slowly got rid of most, if not all, of the black people that worked at the group home. After the RC2 left, the position was open, and I immediately began vying for the job. I worked extra hard. I stayed late. I came in early. I worked overtime. I covered any open shift. I cooked. I cleaned. I just did all kinds of extra work for the individuals and for the group home. I would say things to Dan like, see, this is why you should make me the RC2. Dan would always invite me out for drinks, specifically wine. I was smart enough to decline that. He would spend a lot of time talking about his wife and kids. He would always say that she was a quote-unquote good girl and how he would have loved to be a stay-at-home dad, but she wouldn't let him stay at home even though she made most of the money. He would go on about his mother who would chase her sleeping pills with wine. He would talk bad about the manager before him, essentially because he was gay. He would call him a weak. Dan claimed he grew up around mostly black people and asked me to identify a smell he remembered from black girls' hair. He finally settled on the smell being coconut oil and then told me that I smelled like coconut oil. To get the job, I had to open my unopened degree and text a picture of it to him. He alleged that in a meeting with the decision makers that they wanted to see it. He alleged that these higher-ups didn't want to hire a black person for the position, but he vouched for me, so that's supposedly how I got the job. He would make demands of the other girls, white ones, who he cherry-picked. It was like all at once, all the black people were gone, and then he hired all these white people in their place. He put about 3 or 4 of this, like there were 3 to 4 of pretty much the same white girl. And one time he had one of them take his laundry to his house because his machine was broken, and he had done it at the group home, and they did it too. And although that was incorrect behavior towards other white people, it just goes to exemplify how white people perceive their power, abuse it whenever possible over people they perceive to be in a weaker position. He would test me to see how I would react to certain things. For instance, I would get super cold and turn the heat on. He would comment on how hot it was and say it was the Neanderthal in him and then look at me. I must have been a little smarter than I've given myself credit for because he used to call me elusive. He hated that I was not 100% transparent or open with him. And once we got into what seemed like an argument and in a raised voice, he was like, why don't you trust me? I need you to trust me. My response was clear. I don't have to trust you so long as what you're doing is correct and beneficial to the individuals we support. I don't have to trust you. And he hated that. Once he tricked me into coming into his house. We were running errands and for the group home. He said he had to make a quick stop by his house to grab something. I didn't know how he got me to come into his house, but I do know I was uncomfortable when I was there. When you walk in, and I wrote as much detail as I could just because I wanted to get it all out. So anyway, when you walk in, there's some small steps to the right that lead to a den. There was a bookshelf over with books. I busied myself there while he did whatever he was doing. When he returned, he pulled a book off the shelf and asked me to read a little while he sat in his chair and I sat on the floor. I think this is something he and his wife would do, read to one another. I know I was uncomfortable because I felt so weird afterwards. I made a mistake thinking that I could share some racial social justice theater I was doing with a company called TCP with all the whites that I was working. I was completely uncodified, completely ignorant, y'all. I even posted on our one of our posters in my office for folks to come and see it. Dan came one night, and that's when he heard me speak about white people, and I didn't know he was in the audience that night. And one of the things I had said to the audience, I posed the question was, what is it about the psychology of the people who do what white people have done? And I think he came and said hello to me after the performance. I introduced him to the director, and he later told me he was so disturbed that he drove all the way back, which is an hour from where I was, with the windows down. Anyway, I'm very certain that that was the beginning of the end for me there at that company. Dan had seen too much of who and what I am and how I think and feel to be able to hide his contempt for me. He would increase and intensify his terroristic attacks towards me. I recall once after having thoroughly trained these new white girls, I left for an hour early to beat traffic for rehearsals. When I returned to work the following day, I was no way prepared for what awaited me. And now, mind you, I'm the assistant group home manager. The meeting began with Dan telling me that I fucked him over in front of everyone. I was mortified and humiliated. His clique of white wenches colluded together as white people do to tear me down and traumatize me, terrorize me, and make me feel like a shell of myself. Those white people couldn't bear to see, excuse me, I'm going to be slightly egoic here, to see a beautiful black female with a degree, certifications in theater, doing everything and loving life. They needed to see this uppity nigger be brought down, so that's what they did. I remember this one white female who didn't even work at the same location as me, but was filling in for a time, approached me with some sheer racist nonsense. It's not that I don't like you, but, and I never effed with her anyway. Remember that this time in training when, I'll skip this part, I won't read it, I'll tell you. So we were sitting in training, she was about my age, everyone else is older, we're slightly thinner, people are larger, it was cold, so I actually was like, we're cold only because we're skinny, not realizing that it was going to make big people feel some type of way. But she, everyone else was white. I was the only black person. So I was really trying to be friends with her, saying like, oh, like we're freezing just because we need to eat more. But anyway, she colluded with the white people, and I called them these white wenches. But by then, I couldn't care less about this female. She was also jealous because there was an African man who was really gorgeous, and he was attracted to me. And he tried to pursue me, but I didn't. I'm skipping a little bit to try to speed this up. And I believe that white wench tried to spread a rumor that we had sex. And even Dan confronted me about this, which is a lie. Like, that never happened. So she spread this rumor. When looking back on that experience, I just think to myself how much I used to do for my job, the people I supported in the group home. Once I was driving on the way to rehearsals, I got a call from one of the African females who had been there longer than me and who did not like that I had been promoted. For those female who was thinking about promotion, called me and cussed me out because she wanted to call off last minute and she had a habit of doing this and I didn't allow it to happen. I'm going to skip into isolate. I hated working in that environment with these racist suspects. It wore me out and did a number on my level of self-respect and my mental health. I slaved there. Everything hit the fan when I put in my 2 weeks. They said I would have to stay for a month. I did find that in the writing, so I did. I had supported because I'd known. Anyway, skip. I don't know. I must be frustrated at this point. I did a substantial amount of writing, and I was very enrolled. And this is okay. So looking back, there's so much I would have done differently. I would have stayed in RT1, meaning I didn't want the promotion. I would have never brought my laptop to work. I almost forgot that he threatened me with a blog post that I had written about him, calling him psychotic, and he, I can't read that. Anyway, he twisted my slang in another post, making it seem that I had been drinking at work, and what I had said was that I had went to work on a bottle of liquor, not the same as I went to work with a bottle of liquor. It's if you speak, anyway, not the same thing. And I still don't know if he zoomed in on the camera and was able to see my blog, or someone else was spying on me for him, or he was spying on me. I would have never shared my theater work. I would have never gone to his house. I would have never talked about anything other than work or weather. I would have only done my job as specified in my contract or like in my duties. I would have never allowed myself to be disrespected. I would have had a voice recorder. I would have told somebody and filed a formal complaint. I would have taken voracious notes. I would have talked more with people about what was going on. I would have stayed part-time. And I would have been more quiet and invisible so that I could watch other folks. And that's it.
Wowee. I've said I think it can be helpful to review. I think also can be just stunning when you look back, when you have a better grasp that racism, white supremacy is war, and then you look back and see the level of collusion and how many different ways that they're practicing racism, the surveillance. That's why I say that all the time. Like, you should just assume that you're being watched while you are on the job, whether it's physically with the other whites that you're around or if they're using electronic surveillance or whatever it is. You should just assume that. That's why I said just have that in mind so you are very honest with yourself about what we're dealing with. And do that on a daily basis so that you don't, minimize it, so that you don't take that for granted, that this is serious, that you're going in every day and working with folks who are your enemies, and they want to see you fail. The last thing they want to see is you doing well and promotions and raises. That is simply not the case if you are black in the system of racism, white supremacy. If you're non-white, that's what it means. Thank you so much for sharing. I think, again, we heard the role of white women in all of this. And again, I think that same pattern, even going all the way back to where we started out with Tyrus Wong, you can work as hard as you possibly can, miss all of your rest and ruin your sleep cycle and miss all of your family events and, skip lunch and just grind yourself away day after day after day. And I just have not seen evidence that impresses whites to the point to say, well, yes, we're not going to mistreat this nigger. They have worked hard and slaved, and we're going to give her a promotion. No, it just means, we got a lot of work out of that nigger. Let's figure out what we can get her to do next before we fire her or mistreat her or whatever, try and spread some other lie or rumor that she's, sleeping around with everybody in the building. Standard operating procedure. This is what it means to be white. Again, I'll just say workplace racism every Thursday. We'll be here again tomorrow, same time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And if you have commentary, question, suggestion, you need help finding something in the archives, drop us an email. We will hook you up. untiljustice@gmail.com. untiljustice@gmail.com. And feel free to drop me a letter again if you don't hear back. Sometimes it does go to spam or wherever else, or I forget, I just neglect to get back to someone. So feel free to write again if you didn't get a response and still need answer to your question. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Hope it was a constructive investment of your Thursday evening. Sobriety would be best under conditions of white supremacy. We can carry that forward in 2017. You never know when you will bump into Daniel Holtzclaw, Darren Wilson, any other white person, race soldier, badge or no. They are dangerous. Alcohol, cannabis, tobacco, any other narcotics, that's not going to help us end white supremacy, and the evidence shows that unequivocally. Creator, we ask that you help us remain patient with other black people, victims of white supremacy. We ask that you help us remain patient with ourselves. Remind us to demonstrate the highest levels of black self-respect at all times, in all places, each and every time we are in contact with another black person. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Context of White Supremacy signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. Problem. You're a victim. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.